Chapter 811. This is the master of a world? What a disappointment. Zhongsho reached out with his mind and took out the nameless sword. With a casual slash, the Qinyang sword light along with the various blade energies and spells were all shattered. He stared coldly at Cruel Sun's sword, Saint Yuqinyang. You are called Yuqinyang? Just a celestial realm, and you dare to call yourself a sword saint? Aren't you ashamed? Being stared at by samurai, Yuqinyang felt like his heart was about to explode as it jumped intensely. He only felt the intent crush over, smashing his remnant son's sword intent into pieces. He couldn't help but go crazy. What kind of person was this? Just this spiritual sense suppression made him feel like he couldn't take it? It totally suppressed his peak soul realm sword intent. This was just spirit realm? What a joke. Blood sword monster lord. Invincible in the cloud world? How is this person strong to such an extent? No wonder Li Fengfei would retreat. Although there were many people here, in front of such a person, they had no chance at all. Pretty much without even thinking, Yuqinyang didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. The magical treasure behind him gave off a spiritual light and was about to tear open the space. However, in the next moment, he heard Zhongsho scoff coldly. Do you think you can come and go as you wish in front of me? Yuqinyang scoffed coldly and continued forwards, stepping out of the Dragon Hall space. The other few people did the same, decisively retreating. However, after a short moment, those people returned to where they were originally standing. They exchanged glances with one another. Their expressions instantly became really ugly. Yuqinyang's heart sunk, for words flashed across his mind. Space folding. He didn't forcefully stop it. Instead, he twisted space. It caused a few of them to return to their original spots. For this person to have such a remarkable ability, his mastery of space-time was close to perfection. Coincidentally, at this moment, a sword light was like a dragon, like lightning as it slashed down. Yuqinyang also instinctively swung his sword. In his haste, many incomplete suns flew up to meet the attack. However, in front of that sword light, it was extremely weak. The blazing sun, which seemed to be majestic and powerful, shattered upon contact. A loud clang resounded through the void. The Cruel Sun, sword in Yuqinyang's hand, was still held horizontally in front of him. His entire body was riddled with holes. Even the treasure behind him trembled. The dozens of spirit realm cultivators all fell out. Fortunately, they did not die, but blood flowed out of their 7 orifices and their faces were ashen. Zhongsho had no intention of holding back. With another slash, he chopped off Yuqinyang's head. Unfortunately, this person's swordsmanship is actually not bad. If you block it seriously, you should be able to block my 3 swords. He failed to escape and was caught off guard. After that, he lost control of his mind, and his will dissipated. This was why just one sword was able to heavily injure his physical body and soul, causing him to be on the verge of death. Yi Feishuang and Yi Feishuang were stunned. This Cruel Sun sword saint, who they feared and hid in the celestial world for several months, died just like that. Such a person who ruled a world, was actually just not bad in Zhongsho's eyes. However, this person was indeed only able to block one sword from Zhongsho. 2 swords, and he died. A few dozen breaths ago, Jia Hongji's face was just a little ugly, but he didn't lose his mind. Now he was filled with fear and shock. He was totally unable to accept the scenes in front of him. Kumo was dead. The Cruel Sun Sword Saint was also killed in 2 swords. He originally didn't care about the Feishuang and Yi Feishuang as he could capture them easily. With the addition of Zhongsho, this unlucky person, he didn't care much and thought that he could casually kill him. However, at this moment, the situation had suddenly reversed. So it turned out that they were the real ants. In the eyes of Zhongsho, he was just a clown. However, in the end, he was still a cultivator. In just an instant, he had already reacted. Fellow cultivators, we probably won't be able to escape today. If we work together, we might have a chance. Jia Hongji said this, but he also did this. The separation hook slashed out with all his strength, bringing with it the determination to not retreat as it slashed down. Slaying evil separation hook. Today, he was going to kill Zhongshou, this evil demon. He didn't believe that even with dozens of experts of this world working together, they wouldn't have a chance to survive. No matter how strong the flying knife technique was, it could only kill one person. The other celestial realm cultivators didn't need Jia Hongji to instruct them. They either used spells or directly slashed down with their weapons. In the blink of an eye, this space was covered in a spiritual energy storm. Numerous cracks spread out in the void. The 13 celestial realm cultivators worked together, and the other spirit realm cultivators didn't sit still and watch. All of a sudden, it was like tens of thousands of spells had descended here. Yi Fei Shuang and Yi Fei's hearts jumped. However, this time, they didn't feel any fear. They instinctively felt that as long as this man was here, they would be fine. Zhongshou felt his head hurt, looking at the huge aura in front of him. Even he felt a chill in his heart. Since he couldn't take it head-on, then he could only avoid it, just as he was about to bring the two women behind him to back off. However, he had an idea and thought back to that turtle. Then, his lips curled up once more. Those two shields nearly caused me to go bankrupt. This is the time for you to use your strength. With a thought, Zhongshou tossed the turtle out from his sleeves. The blue fire Xian turtle was originally sleeping in the spirit beast bag. Now that it appeared, it felt extreme danger. It instantly opened its eyes and looked forward. Then, it didn't hesitate to place the two shields in front of its body. It spread out 6,000 feet to protect its entire body. Then, numerous pieces of Xian ice formed outside the shields. Then, there was a series of clanging sounds as ice shards flew all about. Especially when the evil slaying hook slashed onto the shields, the sound was the clearest. A moment later, these voices suddenly stopped. Blue fire Xian turtle, a celestial realm god beast. It actually has Xuanwu body protecting energy. Who knows who said those words? But it caused all around to be deathly silent. Jia Hongji's handsome face was devoid of blood. His evil slaying hook, which was said to be able to break everything, was only able to break the ice layer. He went all out, but it didn't even leave a mark on the two shields. They couldn't beat it, but when everyone worked together, they still couldn't do anything to it. This Zhongshou could actually make such a celestial beast yield. Also, where did that shield come from? Seeing that there was no movement in front of it, the Xian turtle stretched out its huge head. It looked around, and after realizing that it was perfectly fine, it gleefully waved the giant shield around. Naturally, the three people on the tortoise's back were exposed once again. As expected, they were perfectly fine. Their bodies didn't move at all. It's already over? Little Gold and Hanshi flew out from Zhongshou's sleeves. The former directly turned into Zhongshou. It was fully formed, just that it was a size smaller. Hanshi brought the 18-guard silver ants and danced in the air. He was too lazy to attack those spirit realm cultivators. He could only let these protector spirit beasts do it for him. It could also train these little fellows in battle. Just as he was about to attack, Kuan Ran bowed. Tianfang Guild Kuan Ran greets country ruler zone. Just like fellow Taoist Li, I was bewitched by Jia Hongji to come here. I know that I am in the wrong. So please give face to the celestial order and show mercy. If we offended the two of you, our Tianfang Guild will compensate and thank you with huge gifts. Zhongshou's eyes squinted when he heard that. This person's words were really respectful. However, his words were pretty much all about Tianfang Guild. It was obvious that he still had his own identity and was also trying to threaten him. He broke out into a laugh. Tianfang Guild? What does that have to do with me? Now that you know you are in the wrong, then what were you doing before? A silver light flew out, buffed by space-time techniques. In just a flash, it pierced into Kuan Ran's brow. Using Tianfang Guild to threaten him, what a joke. Not to mention whether or not the Celestial Order would stick out for Kuan Ran. Even if they had such intentions, they couldn't even take care of themselves, so how would they bother about other things? Even if they came, they wouldn't fear anything. After killing this person, Zhongshou looked at the other person who was said to be the master of a world. You are called Martial Heaven God? What a weird name. Yi Feian only felt that her mood was unprecedentedly good. Looking at these people who had once threatened and forced them into a corner, falling one by one to Zhongsho's hands, she felt really good. Without the threat of life and death, a smile appeared on her face once more as she mocked. No, he called himself martial god in Feishing world. Then, he wanted the people of that realm to worship him and respect him alone. Thus, he had named martial heaven god. Zhongsho broke out into a laugh when he heard that. Martial god? In the cloud world, from ancient times till now, no one dared to use that name. He couldn't help but sigh. When he came to the outer region, he had the mentality of a country bumpkin entering the city. However, why did he feel that these people were the ones who were ignorant and arrogant? He nodded his head slightly. Let's hope that you can live up to your name. Martial like a god, take 3 swords from me. The martial heaven god was instantly terrified, his eyes focused and wary as he looked at the nameless sword in Zhongsho's hand. However, Zhongsho wasn't able to attack in time. Jia Hongji's face was filled with joy. It is actually young Master Hanwei. Juelong Celestial Region, Jia Hongji welcomes young Master. When the martial heaven god heard that, he was surprised. He felt really fortunate to have escaped death. He nearly couldn't hold back and wanted to laugh out loud. He was the martial heavenly god. Since this person was here, he definitely had a god realm expert protecting him. No matter how strong this bloodsore monster lord was, he wouldn't be able to do anything today. As for the rest, most of them were baffled. Only the few celestial realm cultivators who followed Yu Kenyang were filled with joy. They all bowed. Welcome, senior brother. The moment these words were said, the space was forcefully ripped open once more. A total of 18 huge flood dragons, dragging a huge bronze chariot, rushed into the space of the Dragon Palace. Chapter 8:12. When the carriage drove over, it was covered in all sorts of clouds and neon lights. A cold and vast intent suppressed the space of the Dragon Hall. It chased away Zhongsho's sword intent and suppressed it to a point. Zhongsho's eyes turned cold as he looked over. Just as he was looking over, he felt his sleeves being pulled. He turned around and saw that it was Yi Fan. The latter's eyes were filled with uneasiness as she used her eyes to signal him to look in the direction of the Dragon Hall. Zhongsho knew what she wanted to do. She wanted to use this chance to escape into the instant space Dragon Hall. However, his body didn't move at all. He stood on the spot and asked curiously, "Who is this young Master Mingwei?" "He is Yu Kanyang's junior brother." Yi Feishuang's voice was solemn. His father was said to have been Saint Realm for many years. He lives in Songling World's Baijua Mountain and is called the Baijua Mountain Head. He has 7,000 disciples spread across many worlds. Zhongsho was enlightened. No wonder Yu Kanyang's subordinates would call him senior brother. A Saint Realm son was worthy of being called young master by Jia Hongji. Looking out once more, he saw that apart from the coachman, there was a young man on the carriage. There was a young man sitting on top of it. Like Yu Kenyang, he had a pale golden complexion and looked very handsome. There was another person sitting beside him. His gaze was cold as he scanned the area. His gaze was like a spear, causing everyone to bow down. He couldn't help but sigh. As expected, he had offended a god realm cultivator. Without hesitation, he crushed a star shining talisman in his sleeves. Who knew when that ice hornless dragon, Ao Kuan's lover, would arrive? At this moment, he could only ask the sect for help. He mocked himself in his heart. Was he really unlucky? He had just gotten the 3-star shining talismans for a few months, and 2 of them were already broken. It seemed like the other junior nephews had no use for them. To ask for help every few days, didn't that mean that he was useless? The people around didn't notice at all. They were either surprised or excited. The teen on the carriage, young Master Mingwei, looked at Yu Kanyang's corpse. "In that case, my senior brother Yu has already perished?" His voice was like jade, clear and gentle. That's right, he was the one who killed them. His name is Zhongsho, and it is said that he is the ruler of a country in the cloud world. As Jia Hongji spoke, he coldly glanced at Zhongsho and Li Fengfei, who had a strange expression on his face. Zhongsho was one thing, but he had to make sure that he died here. Li Fengfei and the other 2 hated him even more. You want to get away from this matter after betraying us at the last minute? This person's swordsmanship is superb, especially his flying dagger technique. Fortunately, young Master Mingwei arrived in time. Otherwise, we would have died without a burial ground today. I'm quite interested in the thing you mentioned, so I rushed over to take a look. Nodding his head slightly, young Master Mingwei looked at Zhongsho with interest. The look in his eyes was as if he had seen a new toy. Cloud World? Monarch of a country? Was this the person? He actually has such ability? A series of words caused Zhongsho's face to be filled with black lines. Martial Heaven God also bowed. That's right. Cultivator, you couldn't take one sword from him. Kumo and Tianfang Guild Kun Ran also died in one knife. If it wasn't for young Master personally coming, I would have died. I can't thank you enough for saving my life. In the future, if young Master has any orders, I won't reject it. In front of Mingwei, he only used his real name. He probably knew that using the name of Martial Heaven God was a little too much of a joke. Senior brother, you also died in one sword? Young Master Mingwei didn't seem to care about what Martial Heaven God said. The teasing look in his eyes became even thicker. Logically speaking, I should take revenge for senior brother. However, Father said that anyone in the cloud world who has ability can't be offended. Even if we offend them, we should try not to kill them and make them enemies. Is that good? Today, if you are willing to be my Su Mingyue's slave, then I can spare your life. When he heard this, Jia's expression didn't change. Martial Heaven God's aura fluctuated slightly. Li Fengfei sighed. He wanted to open his mouth several times, but in the end, he didn't say anything. Before this, he bowed and begged. How was it because of Zhongsho's unparalleled flying knife technique? Zhongsho's identity was also a reason. At this moment, it was too late to say that this blood sword monster lord was the only direct disciple of End Realm Long Ying. Young Master Mingyue's words meant that they were enemies who wouldn't rest until one of them died. When it concerned their family, even End Realm Saint Venerables had to care about it. These peerless cultivators who had lived for a long time actually did not care about false reputation, but they definitely did not want their disciples to go out without any face and be trampled on by anyone. You want me to be your slave? Zhongsho laughed. His gaze was dark and cold as he looked at Mingwei opposite him. Is that true? If I was you, I would swallow those words. In case you cause problems for your father. Those words were really a kind reminder. Long Ying had a fiery personality. Even after thousands of years of hardship, he had restrained himself. However, if he heard those words, he would definitely charge over to Songling World, Baijue Mountain. He would capture that venerable Baijue and question him. Of course, I'm a man of my words. Although he said that, for some reason, Su Mingyue felt panic in his heart. Zhongsho's words didn't have any intent to threaten or warn him. Instead, it was more of a teasing tone. Looking closely, he saw that the person opposite him had a clear gaze. His sword intent charged out of his body without fear, going up against the god realm's spiritual sense. Even if blood seeped out from the corner of his lips, he was trying his best to maintain it. His heart was firm, and he didn't give in. Mingwei instantly understood and laughed coldly. Looking at you, you aren't willing. Since that is the case, then I don't mind sending you and senior brother you on a journey together. The middle-aged man beside him, who hadn't said a word, instantly understood. He casually tossed out a talisman, which melted in midair. Inside, thousands of crimson needle shadows rained down like torrential rain, sharp and ferocious. The blue fire Xian turtle saw that the situation wasn't good and instinctively opened up its two giant shields. Xian ice formed to block the red needles. The Xian ice shattered. The Xian turtle's body was forced back by the huge impact. A moment later, the needles dissipated. The giant shield was perfectly fine, but the blue fire Xian turtle appeared dispirited. It was obvious that it couldn't hold on anymore. The middle-aged man was surprised, and then his eyes lit up. Blue fire Xian turtle, what a magical treasure. What a Xuanwu body protecting energy. He thought about it seriously and then stopped, saying gently, Young man, if you are willing to give this turtle to my young master, I will give it to you. serene, can make the decision to let you leave. Zhongsho looked coldly at this person and didn't have any intention to bother with him. In his heart, he found it weird. The star's shining talisman shattered. However, it didn't seem to have any effect. It seemed that he had been intercepted by someone halfway. It wasn't spread out to shine the stars onto the worlds. This was a talisman that a saint realm venerable used his life essence blood to write. Only a saint realm venerable could block it. Who was it that did this? He couldn't ask for help. This was really tough. Did he really have to use his trump card to flee into the instant space Dragon Hall? However, he could only hide for a while. Who knows when that ice hornless dragon, who was half a step to end realm, would rush over? Just as he was thinking about this, outside of the Dragon Hall, he heard a voice. A majestic voice spread out from afar. Young Master? Who dares to call themselves Young Master in front of my Lu family, Young Master? You are just a servant of the Su family. You offended my master today. Do you want your Su family to be wiped out? If you are smart, you should kill yourself to apologize. In case your Baiju mountain is dragged down, a person arrived along with the voice. He wore a purple robe, and on his right chest was a pale white flame. He said flatly, but his tone was unquestionable. When this person arrived, Su Rang's body shook, and he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. He was shocked as he looked at the person who came. The purple-robed person entered with a huge aura. Behind him followed a carriage which was pulled by 9 spirit realm fire phoenixes. The entire body of the carriage was made from an unknown Xian-grade purple spiritual iron, giving off a noble aura. Apart from the coachman, there was no one else. There were 40 servants who followed at the sides. Men and women, none of them were below celestial realm. Their gazes towards Zhongsho were a little weird. There was ecstasy, gratification, peace of mind, guilt, reverence, and fanaticism. They all followed the purple-gold-robed middle-aged man to the front of Zhongsho. They all knelt down and bowed. We are old servants. Today, we are here to welcome Young Master back to the palace. Young Master, please board the carriage. Zhongsho frowned and looked at the people in front of him speechlessly. Zhongsho was once a young master, and now he was the king of country. How did he become a young master? He didn't recognize any of these people. What was going on? Su Rang seemed to be heavily injured and was about to fall. He grabbed the carriage railing and barely managed to stabilize his body. He asked with a dry voice, "Young Master? Which family's Young Master?" The purple-gold-robed man with the azure flame mark on his chest scoffed coldly when he heard this. Which family can it be? To be able to make me, the Xinyan Hall head Fondua, bow to him. Naturally, he is the young master of my sky-burning Lu family, the future ruler of the 800 worlds. The moment he said this, the hundreds of people in the Dragon Hall were devoid of color. Zhuya Hongji felt an explosion in his mind, and he couldn't think anymore. Zhongsho himself also understood in his astonishment. So these people were from the Lu family, in the same world, not far away from the Dragon Hall space. An old man who was meditating in the sky opened his eyes. He cast his gaze toward the wondrous space in the distance that had been under the surveillance of his spiritual sense this entire time. Then, he sighed with a complicated expression. They are finally going to act? Little Mrs. Old subordinates are actually all gathered here. Speaking of which, the Sanyan God Hall is already under his control. His personality is still the same as before, swift and decisive, seizing every moment. He hesitated. If Young Master agrees to return to the Lu family, then should I help him or look on coldly from the side? Although he still remembered the instructions from back then, his heart was still burning with passion. If Young Master was willing to fight, the sky-burning Lu family wouldn't fall into the hands of others. What a difficult situation. Chapter 814. Within the small and narrow world, beside the lake on the floating island, Ao Kuan was frozen in ice and couldn't move at all. He could only use his spiritual sense to sense the chess game in front of him. In just a moment, a white shadow appeared beside him. "Why are you back so quickly?" Ao Kuan's face was filled with shock. Unfortunately, he was blind and couldn't see Ao Yi's expression. Did something happen? Yes, There is no need to go over. Aoi walked behind Aokun. When her hand touched the Xian ice, all the layers of ice melted away. People from Sangyin Saint Hall have interfered. That new hall head is really amazing. He is just initial Saint Realm, and he managed to stop me halfway. Sangyin Saint Hall, Liu family. Ao Kuin's brow rose up. The sky-burning Liu family had 6 Saint Halls. Sangyin Saint Hall was one of them. Naturally, he wouldn't think that Ao wasn't the opponent of that Sangyin Saint Hall head. Most probably because she wanted to heal him. She was worried and wasn't willing to fight and damage her essence chi. Threads of cold dragon power injected into his body. It was cold but not icy. Instead, it felt really comfortable. It caused him to forcefully circulate the destruction method, causing his injuries to recover bit by bit. After recuperating from his injuries for several months, Ao had personally pulled him back bit by bit from the brink of death. 3 days ago, his consciousness was still in a state where it could disappear at any moment. Today, he was able to speak as he pleased. Naturally, it is the Liu family. I heard that your brother is a blood descendant of the Liu family, the son of the only daughter of the Liu family. This new Sangyin Saint Hall head is called Fang Jue, and he was his mother's servant. She said expressionlessly, but a weird expression appeared in Ao Yi's eyes. I think that this person won't harm your brother. Since it involves his family matters, I didn't bother. I think that Fang Jue is scheming and wants your brother to fight for the Liu family head position. Oh, the head of the Liu clan? Ao Kuin's expression was filled with disbelief. Then, he seemed to have comprehended something. Speaking of which, my sworn brother really does have the qualifications to do so. As long as he returned to the Liu clan, how many of the Liu clan's disciples could compete with him? However, that fellow probably won't be willing. He wasn't even willing to care about the foundations of Gantian Mountain that his father had passed down. Why would he take the initiative to step into the Liu family's quagmire at this time? The sky-burning Liu family had long surpassed the 800 worlds. Their strength could be ranked in the top 3 in this region. With just the strength of a single family, they were able to suppress all the clans in this region. They were definitely strong. They were, without a doubt, the noblest surname and one of the most powerful powers in this region. However, although this clan was powerful, there were also many internal disputes. If Zhongsho were to get involved, he would have to spend a lot of time and energy and go through a lot of risks to reach the top of the pyramid. Otherwise, he would be caught by the countless undercurrents in the Liu family, crushed into powder. This didn't match with what that fellow had been chasing. He only wanted to reach the pinnacle of the sword path and didn't care about anything else. Even if he had no choice but to rule a country, he would be able to easily deal with the administrative matters. He didn't even need the ruler to interfere. That would be even better. This was Zhongsho's personality, and what he wanted. That fellow was totally hopeless. Interesting. The old subordinate of Zhongsho's mother was actually able to climb to the position of Sangyin Hall head in the Liu family and take charge of one of the 6 Saint Halls. Who knows if the person in charge of the Liu family did it on purpose or not? Didn't they say that the current Liu family head was in secluded meditation? There was no reply. Ao Kuin thought about it and knew that he wasn't in the mood to discuss this matter. He smiled. Looking at your chess game, it is really weird. Your opponent with the black piece seems to be really bad. But why is it that in the end, he was the one who won? Who said that he won? This person is Tsang, Shengdao Headway Su. He loves to cheat. While I wasn't here, he added 2 pieces to the board. He glanced at the chessboard. In the end, she was treating Ao Kuin and wasn't distracted at all. Only now did she notice that the chessboard was the same as a few months ago. Even the positions of the pieces were the same, only that there were 2 more. Following which someone asked curiously, "How did you know that I was holding the white piece?" By the lake, Ao Kuin smiled and explained, his soul sweeping across the jar with dozens of white pieces as well as the lake at the side. His expression dimmed. That is the extreme flame, true water. Or you've been tying yourself up in the extreme flame, true water these few years, right? Aoi kept silent and didn't reply. What else could she do? She was filled with gentleness, but could only leave in sadness. Originally, she had already prepared to live in seclusion, secretly wishing that her biological sister and the person she loved could be married forever, never leaving each other, and be of one heart forever. In the end, not long after, there was a huge change. She wanted to save him, but she wasn't strong enough. She could only lock herself up here and focus on the Tao. She hoped that in the future, she would be able to help. Even if she could help Ao Kuan, it would be good. After a moment of silence, Ao smiled sweetly again. Why are you saying all this? It is good that you are out now. He is really happy these days. Ao Kuan was stunned, and then he sighed softly. Unfortunately, his eyes were gone, and he couldn't see Ao's smile. She would definitely be extremely beautiful. Even if one was a saint realm, without eyes, it would be really inconvenient. Following which he came back to his senses and thought about Zhongsho. That fellow was probably having a huge headache now. The future head of the 800 worlds? His path was filled with thorns. Within the Dragon Hall space, Zhongsho was still in a daze as he looked in front of him. Even if he had been through numerous storms, he would be able to remain calm even if a mountain collapsed in front of him. No matter what kind of changes he faced, he would be able to calmly deal with them. However, at this moment, a saint realm suddenly walked in front of him and said that he wanted to worship him as a master. He only felt that he was at a loss and didn't know what to do. Liu family young master? He did have the Liu family bloodline, but he had nothing to do with the Liu family. Instead, he was their enemy. How did he have anything to do with the term young master? Yi Fei Shuang and Yi Feiyan behind him were both stunned. Then, their expressions turned weird. They thought to themselves, so that was the case. No wonder Zhongsho didn't care about that young master Mingyue at all. If he was the future master of the Liu family, then be it Su Mingyue or Juelong Celestial Region. In front of him, they weren't much. After being stunned for a moment, Zhongsho came back to his senses, his brow furrowed. You are the head of Sungyan Saint Hall, right? Is there something wrong with the title of young master? His tone was cold and filled with a sense of rejection. Please rise. I am the Qian country ruler Zhongsho, Zhong family racehead. I have nothing to do with your Liu family. It is best if people don't misunderstand. Young master, if Miss Hanyan heard your words, she would be really sad. Don't you have the Liu family sky burning blood in your body? Or are you unwilling to admit it? The head of Sungyan Saint Hall smiled and didn't care at all. My surname is Fong Ju, and I have followed Old Master and Little Miss for many years. Young master, you could just call me by my name. Zhongsho held his breath and then shook his head. I remember that my mother is a sinner of the Liu family. Who knows where you all locked her up? No matter what, Zhongsho, won't have anything to do with your Liu family. Before he could finish his sentence, the surrounding people all revealed joyous expressions. So this Zhongsho was actually the son of the Liu family first daughter. They had also heard about the changes in the Liu family. Dozens of years ago, for some reason, the Liu family changed. The first daughter who had a chance of inheriting the 800 worlds was punished and locked up. The power of the current Liu family head was also greatly weakened because of this. It was said that in the end, he even went into secluded meditation and stopped bothering about world matters. Since he was the son of a sinner, then naturally, the relationship between Zhongsho and the Liu family wasn't what they had imagined. The so-called young master was most probably an old subordinate of that woman. It was just a private title and couldn't be treated as true. However, he was just an illegitimate child, so there was no need to care. They all relaxed. As long as they didn't truly offend the Liu family, then after today, there might be room for negotiation. However, Zhongsho's voice was interrupted by Fangju, a young master. Since I am the Sun Hall head, then I should follow the rules. When I do things, I should follow the rules. How can I be so willful? How would I dare to call myself the young master of the Liu family? Lowering his head, Fangjue's lips curled up. However, it is no wonder that young master doesn't know. Half a month ago, our Liu Family Central Committee had already listed your name into the Ancestral Hall and the Direct Bloodline Register. Out of the 37, your bloodline is ranked 13th. 4 days from now, it will be the time for our Liu family to worship our ancestors. Not long later, This matter will spread across the various worlds. After he said this, the entire dragon hall was instantly deathly silent, until there was a loud clang, only to hear young Master Mingyu's hand slip and the handle in her hand was smashed into pieces. The heir that the Lu family recognized was totally different from what the old subordinates of Lu Hanyin called him. If he was listed in the direct bloodline register, even if he couldn't fight for the position of head of the Lu family, he would still be the head of dozens of worlds. Different from the cruel Sun Sword Saint who was the head of a world, he was a middle world with rich resources. No matter how much the Lu family fought, they shared honor and humiliation with the outside world. They definitely wouldn't allow others to bully and humiliate them. He felt his heart go numb, and endless fear surged into his heart. His heart felt like it was being bitten by 10,000 ants. He had never felt so regretful in his life. Why did he think about making a trip over? Why did he help these people? Why did he have such a bad mouth? If all of this didn't happen, then nothing would have happened. Even that God Realm cultivator Su Rang's face was ashen white. He couldn't hold up his body anymore and sat down paralyzed. His eyes were stunned like he was thinking about something. Everyone looked at the two of them and then shifted their gazes away. Apart from Li Fengfei and the others, most of them didn't show any pity and didn't bother about them. That was because they were all in similar situations. Even the Hunter Extreme Su family was like that, much less them. Chapter 8:15. Zhongsho squinted and looked closely at Fangjue. Then he shook his head. Adding my name into your Lu family name list is your Lu family matter and has nothing to do with me. I also didn't agree to it. Moreover, that is Lu Shou and not Zhongsho. Although he didn't know the situation of the Lu family, just from the 30-odd successors and the rumors, he knew that the Lu family was in a mess. Even if this might be the Lu family's way of raising Gu, allowing the juniors to fight to choose the one with the right to inherit the Lu family. 10,000 years later, the Lu family not only didn't fall, but instead became even stronger. Zhongsho had no intention of stepping into this whirlpool. Moreover, if he wanted to change his surname, whether or not his father would kill him was another matter. As long as he had enough strength to make the Lu family compromise and release his mother, he would be satisfied. At this moment, he saw hope. Song Shengdao, longing. Although it was far from enough to make the Lu family yield, it was enough to restrict them. That day wouldn't be too far away. Fangjue seemed to have expected that. His voice was expressionless. Since things have reached such a stage, no matter if young master agrees or not, you are already our young master. What has already happened won't change at all. In this region, be it friends or enemies of the Lu family, they will only know that young master is the direct bloodline of the Lu family, the future master. What he meant was that Zhongsho's thoughts weren't important and couldn't change anything. Zhong Shaxin was unhappy. Why did he feel like he was forcing himself on him? He also didn't like being so passive and being forced by others. He also felt helpless. Facing such a person, he really had no way to deal with him. Speaking of which, why did he have to argue with this person? Didn't he find it inappropriate when he saw the dozens of people kneeling in front of him? Thinking about this, Zhongsho couldn't help but rub his temples with a headache. Get up first before we speak. Fangjue smiled when he heard this. This time, he didn't reject and stood up. Looking at Zhongsho, his gaze was similar to the people behind him, filled with complicated emotions. Ever since Miss gave birth to you, she has never met you, but she loves you deeply. If he knew about your current situation, he would definitely be extremely gratified. Zhongsho was slightly moved as he looked at Fangjue. Apart from Zhong Weiran, this was the first time he heard someone who was familiar with his parents talk about his mother. Yes, how could she not love him? He had heard a little about the Lu clan's rules. Under such circumstances, they still insisted on giving birth to him. How could she be an ordinary woman? He had never seen his mother before, nor did he have any memories of her, but he could feel the warmth of his mother. Following which Fangjue said, Fangjue served Miss for 70 years. The entire Fong family has received Miss's kindness. In Fangjue's life, the most painful thing was when little Miss was being blamed, but he was unable to do anything. Now, he was fortunate enough to become a Hall Master. I will definitely do my best to let young Master take control of the Lu family and take back everything that belongs to young Miss. If those words from before made him feel touched, those words made him speechless. However, since he was the Sanyan Hall head, one of the 6 Hall heads, maybe he knew where his mother was? How's my mother now? Thinking about it, he asked. Zhongsho stared right at Fangjue. Where is she now? She is being punished in the 9 Extreme Death Jail. Fangjue replied without hesitation, saying expressionlessly, This is where my Lu family punishes the criminals. 1 world, 9 layers, and she is locked up. Legend has it that the 9th layer is like hell. Once one enters, even if one is a God Realm cultivator, they won't be able to take the natural torture and will die in 3 to 5 years. There are very few who survive. Unless one relies on external help, they won't be able to leave. When Little Miss was punished, she was only at Heaven Realm. In the 9 Extreme Death Jail, even if Old Master sent people to take care of her, she would still be tortured. When he said this, he suddenly thought about something. Fangjue said, a few days ago, a God Realm cultivator charged in and caused a huge ruckus. After that, no one knew where he went. It was unknown if he had entered the 9 Extreme Death prison or if he had left. Some people said that he was your father, Zhong Weiran. Who knows if that is true? Zhongsho's pupils constricted and then returned to normal. 9 Extreme Death Jail? Once one enters, one really can't leave? That's not it. Fangjue shook his head. Unless one has the purest sky-burning blood of the Lu family, or is even stronger. However, such a bloodline hasn't appeared in the Lu family for many generations. Even your mother didn't have it. Or maybe there is someone outside of the death jail to receive her. However, it was said that the 9 Extreme Death Jail was formed by the spiritual sense of an end-realm true ancestor. This was why no one in 10,000 years was able to escape from the 9 Extreme Death Jail. Zhongsho nodded his head in deep thought. In other words, if he wanted to save her, he had to take the risk of angering an end-realm expert. Fangjue said, There is another plan which is for young Master to truly take control of our sky-burning Lu family. Zhongsho glanced at him with a cold gaze. Then he saw that the dozens of Lu family people behind him all had heated gazes, filled with desire and anticipation. Instantly, he held his breath. These people were his mother, loyal servants. He had no right to scold them and also didn't have the heart to do so. He could only wave his sleeves to express his unhappiness. I said that the Lu family matter has nothing to do with me. Unless he had no choice, he definitely wasn't willing to be the head of the 800 worlds. Fighting for power, bloodlines killing one another, wasn't that annoying? After saying this, Zhongsho stepped on the turtle's back. He drove the blue fire Xian turtle towards the 3rd God Hall. Since the Sanyan Hall head was here, then he didn't need to worry about this matter. Naturally, Fangjue would deal with it properly. Fei Shuang and Fei's matters could also be solved by him. This instant space Dragon Hall doesn't allow outsiders to enter. If you want anything, just go and take it. As he said this, Zhongsho grabbed towards Zhuya Hongji. The latter was shocked and wanted to resist. However, he felt the energy around him being broken layer by layer. Right as he was about to use the separation hook, Zhongsho's sword was already beside him. Under the sword intense suppression, he was unable to wave the hook in his hand. The two of them were a realm apart, but he couldn't resist at all. He was grabbed by the hand that Zhongsho formed in midair. He was like a child in the hands of a giant, extremely weak and unable to resist at all. Oh, so, young Master Sword Path has reached the Sword Intense Spirit Realm. No wonder he wasn't afraid of Su rank suppression. Even if this person attacked, young Master will be able to safely retreat into the instant space Dragon Hall. Just now I was a little too nosy. When Fangjue saw this, he instantly laughed out loud. He was filled with unspeakable joy. If Old Master comes out and learns about young Master, who knows how surprised he would be. As for this 3rd Dragon Hall, forget about it. My sky-burning Lu family has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. Before the Cloud World was opened, we had already ruled hundreds of worlds. Our treasures are only above those of the 4 dragon palaces. Although the items within the Instant Space Dragon Hall weren't broken, they weren't rare either. If young master likes them, just take them. I think those Instant Space Dragon race won't dare to say anything to our Lu family. When they heard the words Sword Intent Spirit Realm, everyone in the space looked at Zhongsho like they had seen a ghost. When one cultivated to the Soul Realm, one already had the right to try for the God Realm, especially the people behind Fengjue. Most of them were really knowledgeable. When Fengjue reminded them, they sensed the profoundness of Zhongsho's sword intent. Their eyes were filled with shock and disbelief, but they were also overjoyed at the unexpected good news. Following which, Fengjue smiled. If young master wants to question why this person came, Fengjue knows a thing or two about it. Legend has it that 10,000 years ago, the Instant Space Dragon race copied the book of Ian Extreme Life. They gathered the various treasures of the Cloud World to craft a Universe Light Hall for their disciples to cultivate. However, 10,000 years ago, something happened and their holy land was forcefully broken. The Instant Space Dragon race was helpless and could only send this first Dragon Hall out of the region to avoid the calamity and preserve their strength. However, in that battle, the people who participated all died. With that, this Legacy Dragon Hall was totally lost. Even that Universe Light Hall was nowhere to be seen. Zhongsho was stunned and then scoffed coldly. When he used the sword just now, he had actually covered it up. With the Spirit Realm Sword Intent as the core, what appeared on the outside was the peak of the Soul Realm. Who knew that Fengjue would still be able to see through it? However, could it be that the Universal Light Hall that this person spoke of really existed? What was the use of copying the book of Ian Extreme Life? After knowing the reason, the captured Jia Hongji was no longer of any use. Zhongsho casually tossed him aside and looked towards Feiyan and Feishuang with a questioning gaze. He was asking whether or not the two of them should personally deal with this Jia Hongji in his hands. The two of them shook their heads. Their expressions were still a little stunned. It was like they hadn't come back to their senses from his identity as the Lu family young master. Zhongsho didn't ask anymore, casually slicing off Jia Hongji's head. Such a person, a hall head in Juelong Celestial Region, was as simple as killing a chicken or a dog to him, until the blue fire Xian turtle arrived in front of the Dragon Hall. Only then did Feiyan and Feishuang come back to their senses. They instantly flew up and started to unlock the restrictions. They separated their wrists and used the dragon blood to break the restrictions. Just at this moment, Li Fengfei smiled bitterly and bowed towards Zhongsho. "Your Highness, please save us." Zhongsho was stunned and looked over, only to see that Li Fengfei's face was filled with worry and begging. The other two didn't understand at first, but then their expressions changed and they bowed in unison. Zhongsho didn't understand at first. He didn't think about taking the lives of the two of them. If it wasn't him, then he turned around and looked at Fengjue. The Tsangyin Palace master chuckled. Fengjue won't let anyone who saw a young master attack live. Chapter 8:16. The Tsangyin Palace master chuckled and said, Fengjue won't spare anyone who saw a young master attack just now. Although his tone was calm, it was filled with decisiveness and decisiveness. It caused the faces of the hundreds of people here to turn ashen white. It seems like young master isn't willing to attract the attention of those few people from the Lu family and even implicate your friends and family into Qian. Grasping sword spirit realm sword intent at initial spirit realm. There is no one in the Lu family. If they knew, all the Lu family disciples who had the right to be family head would see young master as their number one enemy. Since young master isn't willing to inherit the Lu family, then just to be safe, it is best to kill all of you here. Zhongsho's expression changed. He originally didn't care about the life and death of these people. Even if Fengjue came, he would kill them all and didn't care much about it. Only at this moment did he realize how dangerous his situation was. A thought flashed across his mind. Who was the one who listed him in the Lu family bloodline register? It couldn't have been because they were bored. Was it Fengjue? The Six Flames St. Hall was controlled by the Lu family outer race, and was the core of the outer powers of the Liu family, ruling numerous experts. He heard that each all had 3 to 5 Saint Realm experts in charge. But could it be that the palace master had such influence, controlling the Liu family successor and the direct bloodline register? He felt like there was a huge scheme hidden within. Also, these people here deserved to die. They could endanger his friends and family into Qian, so he couldn't let them live. However, he had personally promised Li Fengfei and the other 2 that he would let them live. He frowned and was thinking about how to deal with them. Li Fengfei suddenly opened his mouth. "Does ruler lack a helper in your country? I am not talented, but I am willing to make a blood oath to serve ruler from now on." The eyes of the other 2 lit up and they followed. "We also have the same thoughts and are willing to follow ruler. If we have any thoughts of betrayal, we won't be able to pass the God realm tribulation." The moment these words were said, Fang Jue's cold intent retreated like a wave and didn't affect the 3 of them. That murderous gaze also shifted away. They instantly relaxed. They knew that the Sangyan palace master had let them off. Fang Ju no longer bothered with Li Fengfei and the others. He extended his hand and made a grabbing motion. Then he directly plucked off the martial heavenly god's head. Then he casually tossed it aside. A mere peasant dares to call himself a martial god. How ignorant of his abilities. Then he looked at Su Rang on the carriage. "I told you to kill yourself just now. Have you thought it through?" Su Rang's face turned pale. In the end, he let out a sigh. Under Su Mingyue's fearful and disbelieving gaze, he suddenly bowed in the carriage. "It's our fault for offending you today. Palace Venerate, please do not take your anger out on my 100 Extremes mountain." Fang Jue nodded slightly. "Sure. Although you have offended my master, I pity you for not knowing, so your punishment can be reduced. You are the only one to be blamed for what happened today. However, whether or not it will implicate your 100 Extremes mountain will depend on what you, the young lord, and that old man Su say." Su Rang was startled and then heaved a sigh of relief. He said flatly, "My old master has many children. He is not the only one. It is okay if he dies." After he finished, he didn't speak anymore and just sat there quietly. Then, a deathly blue light spread out from the center of his brows. It was really beautiful and beautiful. Fang Jue's gaze didn't look at this person anymore. He knew that Su Rang's soul had dissipated. His body looked perfectly fine like a living person, but his life force was gone. He grinned and revealed his white teeth towards Su Mingyu. "Su Rang is already dead. So what are you going to do? You dare to let my young master be your servant? You Mingyu, how bold!" Under the suppression of Fang Jue's intent, Su Mingyu bled from his 7 orifices and his face was devoid of color. Especially what Su Rang said before he killed himself. It was like a heavy hammer smashing into his heart. At this moment, he was really calm. He stood up and adjusted his clothes before bowing. "Nephew Su Mingyue greets Palace Head Fang. My father served the Liu family 1,700 years ago. Speaking of which, he's also a subject of Palace Head. Why is there a need to harm our relationship today? My words offended young master, and I am willing to be punished. I am willing to be your servant to pay for my sins. As for young master Swordpath, Before he finished, Fang Jue laughed. "You think someone like you is worthy to be young master's servant?" He still stretched out his hand and mercilessly grabbed at the air. Su Mingyue's expression changed, and the necklace on his chest suddenly exploded. Instantly, balls of purple frost sword light shot out from within. He went all out to block. It actually caused Fang Jue to be unable to grab it. Fang Jue wasn't surprised. How could someone of such status not have a final protective item? The giant palm formed in mid-air tightened its grip. Bit by bit, it suppressed and forced. It caused the sword light to slowly show signs of dissipating. Just at this moment, a voice spread out from the necklace. "Which cultivator wants to kill my son? Please show mercy. No matter what it is, we can discuss it." When Fang Jue heard this, he laughed out loud. "Old man Su, if you want your son, then you won't have a chance. In the future, there won't be your Songling world Baijua Mountain." That voice kept silent and then laughed, so his palace head Fang. "Since you want his life, then just take it. He actually offended Palace Head. He really deserves to die. Instantly, all the purple frost sword light was retracted. That giant hand slapped down, and Su Mingyue's body was smashed into meat paste. Blood scattered all about, causing the hearts of the people here to shake. As expected, this Baijiu Mountain head didn't care about Su Mingyue's life. Zhongsho shook his head slightly as he looked on from afar. He thought to himself, why did this Su Mingyue do this? Even without Fangjue, he would still end up in a tragic state. He was also shocked and didn't expect this at all. Who would have thought that the Liu clan would have such influence in the Outer Realm? Just one Sungyan Palace head was able to make a Saint Realm expert who had cultivated for many years swallow his anger and suck up to him. He originally thought that he had overestimated the strength of the sky-burning Liu family. However, looking at it today, he still underestimated them. Before this, he saw some hope of forcing the Liu family to release his mother. At this moment, he suddenly felt that this hope had become really small and really far away. Going up against those 800 worlds, numerous experts. What kind of strength was needed? Unless it was the future God Emperor who was invincible in the universe, the master of millions of worlds, did he really have to go to the World War land? Or even more simply, to inherit the sky-burning Liu family? He only felt millions of worries rise up in his heart. Then it slowly turned into 4 words, 9 extreme death jail. At this moment, his strength wasn't enough, so it was best if he bore with it. However, once he was prepared, he had to head to the 9 extreme death jail. Who knew if Zhong Weiran had successfully saved his mother? Was he also trapped in the death prison? Anyways, he remembered this name. He wasn't willing to bother about this matter anymore. Coincidentally, Fan and Fei Shuang had already opened the gates. Zhongsho walked in without any intentions of staying. Today, since Fangjue arrived, he fell into the rhythm of this person. It was really annoying. He also felt like he had been schemed against by this person. The blue fire Xian turtle, Little Gold, and Hanshi all followed closely behind. When Li Fengfei and the other 2 saw this, they followed closely behind, not daring to fall behind at all. Even if they knew that Fangjue didn't want to kill them, they still weren't willing to stay here for even a moment longer. Who knew whether or not this Sungyan Palace head would change his mind? He entered the instant space Dragon Hall, only to see that this place was similar to the 3rd Dragon Hall, a giant hall. In the center of the hall, there was also a statue of the absolute beginning dragon. Zhongsho looked around, only to see that there were many exquisite carvings all around. The bricks on the ground were made of cloud-patterned gold. Not only was it bright and shiny, but it was also beautiful and elegant. Some decorative metals were worth no less than the black Xian purple hero iron. He couldn't help but be distracted, muttering, "Is the Liu family really so rich?" They were so rich that they didn't even care about these priceless items. The Liu family is indeed the richest in this region. When Li Fengfei heard this, he couldn't help but smile. The sky-burning Liu family isn't famous for their sky-burning blood, but their way of management. Often, a poor world would have plenty of resources under their control for thousands of years. They definitely wouldn't kill the goose that lays the golden eggs. Over tens of thousands of years, their treasures might not be rich. However, if they wanted something, they could get it at any time. Even cultivators could borrow it as long as they promised to repay it. However, this was also because the Liu family was strong and no one dared to target their foundations. After explaining, Li Fengfei added, "However, after all, this instant space Dragon Hall is something from when the Cloud World was at its peak. It would be a lie to say that the Sungyan Palace head doesn't care. It is only because the Liu family and the Dragon Palaces have an agreement that they can offend one another. This instant space Dragon Hall can be considered the territory of the dragon race." Only then did Zhongsho understand. So, those words before were just Fangjue bragging. It wasn't that he didn't want it, but that he couldn't enter. Xiao Jin and Hanshi were both dazed at this moment. They stared blankly at the spiritual iron and mystic gold around them, almost drooling. However, they knew that the restrictions here were really tight, which was why the 2 of them only looked on in anticipation and didn't dare to move their mouths. For some reason, Zhongshu's mood recovered a little. He smiled as he continued to walk towards the back of the hall. The items here couldn't be touched, and they weren't too precious. Based on the experience of the third Dragon Hall, the treasures of the instant space dragon race were most probably hidden in their legacy area. While traveling in the air, Zhongshu expressionlessly asked the three people behind him, "My Qian country is small, and we are poor in finances. Temporarily, we can't support the three of you. If you aren't willing, we can forget about what we said before. You just need to swear that you won't speak, and you can leave on your own." Li Fengfei's expression turned serious. Who knew whether or not Zhongshu's words were sincere or just probing? He shook his head. "Ruler doesn't need to do that. Although I had no choice just now, it was also intentional." Chapter 817. Purposely? Samarim turned his head with a weird expression, totally not knowing what was going on. Although the spiritual wave had risen in the cloud world, many minds had appeared in Donglin and Huizhou. However, after all, the Qin couldn't be compared to those few factions or Taishang and had deep accumulations. Moreover, providing for the Blood Cloud cavalry and that army consumed too much of Gantian Mountain's resources. One must know that before the spiritual wave, even Taoist faction disciples above Spirit Realm had to head to the outer region worlds, both to search for the Tao and also to obtain more Mind Stones and spiritual items to use for cultivation. At this moment, the Qin indeed couldn't afford to raise the three of them. However, Li Fengfei actually told him that it was okay, which surprised him. "I still have some savings these few years." Li Fengfei smiled and explained, "I won't hide it from the ruler. People like us are limited by our talents. Although we still have a lot of lifespan, we still have a long lifespan. Although we have a lot of lifespan, to improve further is as tough as ascending to the heavens. Since normal methods are useless, we can only find other methods. Rather than having no hope of dying, why not become a luck cultivator and use ruler's prosperity to cultivate?" Luck cultivator? Zhongshu squinted his eyes and understood. He knew of one person who was a luck cultivator. It was the Taishang Grand Teacher Zhongshuan. He was originally a Taoist faction disciple, but for some reason, he became a Grand Teacher in Taishang. His cultivation also reached the peak of God Realm in a short 100 years. Actually, the helpers of Gantian Mountain were in a similar situation. However, have you all thought about the dangers within? If one is swept up in the battle for country fate, there's a risk of dying at any moment. If the Qin is wiped out, we will all die together. These words weren't just words to scare him. Out of the 20 over Grey 9 and Spirit Realm helpers he recruited, 9 had died in the battle with the Taoist faction, close to a third. Of course, I have thought about it. Li Fengfei's face was solemn. However, I don't care much about life and death. I just want to walk further on the Tao path. If one day I can reach End Realm, that would be even better. If he couldn't, he would have more confidence when he had the chance to reincarnate in the future. Actually, it's not just me. The two people behind me also have the same idea. As his voice fell, a green-robed man behind him also bowed solemnly. Han Ming greets the monarch. Just like what Old Li said, we are serving the monarch with all our hearts and souls. The other person also smiled and said, "I am Guli." He was not good at deceiving others. The reason why he submitted was because he thought highly of the ruler. Be it the disciple of Saint Venerable Chong Ing or the invincible blood sword monster lord, they both had a bright future. Has Juanshang not heard of the saying, "The flight of a cyan fly is no more than a few martial arts, but the tail of a steed can reach 1,000 li"? I'm willing to be a cyan fly and follow you. As long as there's a chance to take another step forward, I'm willing to die for it. Zhongshu was silent. He had looked down on these three people today. At this moment, they all gave him a very strange feeling. Be it Li Fengfei, Han Ming, or Ge Li, they were all people who feared death. However, what they feared wasn't death itself, but that before they died, they wouldn't be able to comprehend the Tao and witness the foundations of the Tao. Be it comprehension or talents. They weren't as good as him, but they were all using their own methods to chase the peak of the Tao. He couldn't help but mock himself. Zhongshu, Zhongshu, You are blessed by the heavens. Not only did you have the Book of Ian, but you also had decades of knowledge from your last life. How could you be weaker than these few people? Forget it. Let's follow your wishes. He agreed. At this moment, Deqian did indeed need experts to take charge. These 3 intermediate celestial realm experts were all really strong. If they were in Deqian, they would be able to scare off many small fries. Walking in front of the 4 of them were Fei Shuang and Fan. Although they had never come to this instant space dragon hall, after entering, who knows if it was because of the bloodline legacy or because of other reasons. The 2 girls seemed to be very familiar with the Dragon Palace. They led the few of them in like they were really familiar with the place. Along the way, Xiao Chen easily dodged the many restrictions and talismans, or he easily broke them. However, they were a little distracted, their ears perking up to listen to what the few people behind them were saying. They thought that the reason why Li Fengfei and the other 2 were willing to serve Zhongshou was because that fellow was already the Lu family young master. However, the words that followed caused them to be stunned. They actually didn't mention the huge sky-burning Lu family. Instead, they had high hopes for Zhongshou himself. It seemed like Zhongshou's small country in the cloud world not only didn't die, but it had become really famous. Invincible in the cloud world? Bloodsword Monster Lord? What happened in the cloud world? The 2 of them seemed to have missed something. That gate was worried because of Zhongshou's identity. At this moment, hearing the few of them speak, they weren't sure. They had a stomach full of questions, but they could only suppress them. A moment later, they passed through the passageways that were too huge for the human race. Finally, a giant courtyard appeared in front of their eyes. It wasn't appropriate to say that it was a courtyard. It was more like a vast plains. On the opposite side, there was a huge mountain with countless caves on top of it. Who knew how many 100,000 feet tall it was? They could see some long ing dragons dancing around it. What shocked them the most was that everything in front of them was normal. However, they could sense it clearly with their spiritual sense. This world wasn't as calm as it looked on the surface. Numerous space-time vibrations were occurring, either folding, twisting, collapsing, or being born. Every breath, every 10 feet, there were different changes. This is the legacy land of the instant space dragon race. Yi Feishuang's sharp chin rose up. Her tone was filled with pride and also reminiscence. The so-called instant space dragon race, after Spirit Realm, had to enter the first dragon hall to cultivate. It was said that the more profound the space-time technique one grasped, the more benefits one would get in the Dragon Hall. If one could walk to the peak, one could cultivate in the Universe Light Hall for 10 years. She continued, however, that was 10,000 years ago when there was a God Realm instant dragon in charge. When the first Dragon Hall disappeared, the Universe Light Hall wasn't completed yet. Who knows how it is now? Her tone was sad. Who knows if she was feeling sad about the weakness of the instant space dragon race, or because of Zhuya Hongji's betrayal. Zhongshou squinted and then smiled. Do you want me to protect the 2 of you? Speaking of which, what are the 2 of you looking for here? Yi Feishuang scoffed and didn't bother, saying expressionlessly, I don't know the details of the formation here. Luckily, there is no danger to your life. If you can't advance, you could be teleported out of the Dragon Hall. You don't have dragon blood in your bodies and are restricted by the formation much more than us. However, it is best to be careful. After saying this, she pulled Yi Feiyan, who was about to speak to Zhongshou, and walked forwards. A few steps later, they were nowhere to be seen. Zhongshou shook his head and knew that the 2 girls were teleported away by the formation. At this moment, who knew where they went? Looking at the peak, a bright glow shone in Samuraim's eyes. Universe Light Hall? He subconsciously felt that this incomplete celestial treasure would definitely be of great help to him. Without hesitating, Zhongshou stepped out. Then, he felt a huge space-time power wrap around him and teleport him into the distance. Zhongshou didn't resist, retracting his spiritual power and allowing the formation to teleport him. He watched the changes in the surroundings with great interest. When everything stopped, Zhongshou noticed that he was already standing at the foot of the mountain. Interesting. This is the space-time technique that the instant space dragon race grasps? Zhong Shou flicked his finger, causing the space within half a mile to ripple. It is actually 15 minutes later, just now, when his body was teleported, he felt that it was just an instant. However, when he compared it, he noticed that a full 15 minutes had passed in the world in front of him. If it wasn't for him being good at this Tao, he might not have been able to sense it. Zhong Shou was delighted. Luckily, he had read the 4th page of the Book of Ian. Otherwise, he would have been totally confused when he saw the changes in the formation. At this moment, he was able to see through all the mysteries and verify them. There were many things that he didn't understand that he didn't have to doubt anymore, because he had seen proof. This feeling was just too amazing. He looked at the giant mountain in front of him. Zhong Shoxin thought that he was lucky and continued to step up. This time, he didn't allow the formation to move, but instead suppressed it. He changed all the talismans around, either breaking or suppressing them, not allowing them to move at all. He also focused on comprehending the various space-time laws. He was like a sponge absorbing water, absorbing everything that he could touch into his body. In just a moment, Zhong Shou had an idea. He extended his hand forward, and a moment later, he pulled out an item from the seemingly empty space. It was a bag with dozens of crisp and juicy fruits inside. Zhong Shou didn't recognize it. In his memory, he also couldn't find any records of this item. However, that lightning-winged dragon drilled out. Its 2 dragon eyes looked at the fruits with slight hesitation. It swallowed one and chewed it into pieces. Instantly, a sweet fragrance spread all about. The smell was really tempting. Then little gold and showery were all drawn out. They were all gluttonous, and each swallowed one. Zhong Shou was curious and tried to pick one up. He took a bite, and, as expected, it was really sweet and delicious. Unfortunately, it melted in his mouth, and before he could taste anything, it melted in his mouth. In the next moment, he frowned. He felt that the true qi and soul sense in his body that was purposely suppressed had some movement, especially the essence energy in his body, which was greatly nourished. A clear energy seeped into his body along with his soul. It was like mercury spilling onto the ground, seizing every opportunity to roll down. It caused his body to turn cold and his thoughts to become sharp and clear, consolidating and strengthening the soul, fixing the foundations. So it is the cloud desolate era essence Saint Green Ming fruit. Zhong Shou had only heard of the name of such a spiritual item and didn't know what it looked like. He only knew that this item was beneficial to both humans and beasts. It could nourish one's foundations, and the weaker one's cultivation was, the greater the benefits. However, as his Tao foundations were perfect, the Green Ming energy within it couldn't seep in at all. This was why out of the 5 beasts here, he received the least benefits. However, with the Green Ming energy cleansing, some of the weaknesses in his Tao foundations were revealed. He didn't bother about the bitter gazes of little gold and showery as he roared and swept 5 of them into his sleeves. This instant space dragon race is really creative. Chapter 8:18. Along the way, Zhong Shou obtained several spiritual treasures from the Instant Space Spiritual Hall. There were natural spiritual fruits similar to the Essence Saint Green Ming fruit, as well as various artifacts and weapons. They were all hidden in the void and covered by numerous talismans. If one wanted to walk on this mountain, one had to be good at space-time techniques. To notice these things, one also had to have some attainments in this area. Along the way, the talismans went from shallow to deep, like they were teaching him. To say that this was the legacy land of the dragon race was true. No matter how bad one's comprehension was, one would be able to comprehend the abilities of the instant space dragon race. The rewards were these things. Most of them were spiritual fruits and the like. As they were heavily sealed, even after 10,000 years, they were still perfectly preserved and fresh. Zhong Shou had no use for most of them. It wasn't that these things were useless to him. It was that his cultivation had jumped to late spirit realm, and he was trying his best to suppress it. It was best if he didn't come into contact with these spiritual fruits that could strengthen one's foundations. Thus, he could only look on greedily as little gold and the others ate heartily at the side. They divided up all the things he had harvested. As for the tortoise, it was roaring loudly. He seemed to be very satisfied, indicating that following him was indeed a good way to eat and drink. He was very happy. Zhongsho was a little depressed. The few magical treasures that he occasionally obtained needed the dragon body or the instant space dragon race bloodline to activate. Fortunately, deciphering and comprehending the talismans here was his greatest gain on the way here. Unknowingly, he was halfway up the mountain. The space around him was still twisting and changing, trying to pull him out of this place. Zhongsho was prepared to suppress all these changes as usual. However, just as he was about to exert strength, his heart moved slightly. He only felt that his hand was slightly hot. It's the Juntian fist armor. Zhongsho's brow rose up, and a look of shock flashed in his eyes. This pair of Wudao King's fist armor was actually burning without a flame. White flames suddenly burned on his fists. The spiritual armor reacted on its own. Could it be that there are other accessories nearby? Zhongsho was able to contend against the immortal realm because of his dual meridian body and the unification of spirit and martial arts. Secondly, it was because of the Juntian gauntlet. This allowed him to fight against a mid-immortal realm cultivator head-on, without being at a disadvantage. He had been worrying about where to find the remaining parts of the Juntian god armor. Originally, he planned to start from the primeval demon sect. Later, he found out that the number 1 demon sect only had this fist armor as a collection. After that, he lost all clues. The instant space dragon palace disappeared after Heavenly King Ran Wu died in battle. Or maybe, according to the records in the annals of history, an entire 40 outer territory saints had perished under Heavenly King Wu Dao's great heavenly fist. Invincible, the last overlord of the cloud wilderness. It was even said that the few end-realm experts didn't dare to face him head-on. The Qin Emperor unified the cloud world, and the one who chased the alien race out of the cloud world was this cloud world overlord. However, when he died, his cultivation was only at the initial level of the saint realm. His eyes flashed, and Zhongsho allowed the instant space restriction formation to teleport his body. A moment later, he opened his eyes, only to see an extremely large cavern. This place should be within the belly of that giant mountain. Zhongsho looked over, and he couldn't help but be moved. The entire cave was 30,000 feet wide. They were all giant dragon skeletons, and they all died in all sorts of weird ways. If it wasn't for this place being beautifully decorated and the layout being similar to the Dragon Hall outside, he would have died. He nearly thought that this was where the tomb of the instant space dragon race was. All the large and small dragon skeletons were curled up all around, and in the center, there was a tall and upright person. His face was clean and handsome, and he wore a pale golden armor. His body hadn't decomposed, and he was staring forwards in rage. Looking at the situation, it seems like they died together. Zhongsho was shocked. There were signs of battle everywhere. Those dragon skeletons all died from heavy injuries, or a large wound, which was a ghastly sight. Some had broken spines, and their bodies were unbelievably twisted. 2 enormous dragons that were either in the god realm or the sacred realm were torn apart by a tremendous force. What caused his Juntian fist armor to react was the chest armor on the teen's body. It was a ball of flame that burned furiously. However, this flame was a red flame. It wasn't the fist armor, but the silver-white color that he had refined. There are actually 2 of them. One was the chest armor, and the other was the arm armor. They were both made of the same material. Following which Zhongsho turned his gaze to the bottom of the teen. A line of words were written in cursive, but they were majestic and powerful. Father fought at Tingxing Mountain, and the various factions of the Cloud Desolate World watched on. The various races of the Cloud Desolate World gloated. The instant space dragon race attacked our city. Ranwei ran out of grain and reinforcements and lost in the end. Ran Huang was lucky enough to escape. He didn't hate the alien race. He only hated the instant space dragon race for their despicable actions. He had nothing left in his life, and the various factions and races all want his life. This was why he was filled with vengeance and wanted to die with the instant space dragon race. Unfortunately, this battle was for naught, and we were unable to wipe them out. How hateful, how regretful. Zhong Shou kept silent, and then he sighed. So, this teen was the descendant of Ran Wu. To be able to kill so many strong dragon race people here, he did have the invincibility of his father. He was really clear about what happened to Ran Wu that year. In the face of desperation, he had used up all of his strength and died in the end. The entire cloud world seemed to have reached an agreement to watch him die. These instant space dragons had only themselves to blame for encountering such a calamity. However, in Zhong Shou's eyes, it wasn't wrong. When it concerned the survival of a race, no matter what methods they used, they had to. Thinking about it, the true Dragon 9 races went from being the overlords of the cloud world to being forced to leave the cloud world by the human race. How sad was that? Just as he was lamenting in his heart, Xiao Jin and the others didn't stop moving. The restrictions here were all broken due to the battle, and it was like a treasure trove that was opened up. Xiao Jin turned into a ball of liquid and spread out. Everywhere it passed, the precious metals would be destroyed. When it passed by the precious metals, it was nowhere to be seen. Hanshi and the 18 silver ants spread out and spread around the hall. Balls of silver flames rose up and burned the dragon bodies below. They turned into threads of golden Xian energy and merged into his body. The blue fire Xian turtle collected the dragon scales and hid them in its shell. Even Xiaori chose carefully and swallowed 2 dragon pellets. When Zhong Shou came back to his senses, the scene in front of him was already a mess. The entire dragon hall was pretty much swept clean by these few fellows. Zhong Shou opened his mouth and wanted to say that, after all, this was where the legacy of Ao Kuen's race was. At the very least, he had to leave some face for his brother. Then, he decisively kept his mouth shut and joined in. Anyways, the situation here couldn't get worse. The dragon meat was burned by Hanshi's silver flames, and the scales were given to the blue fire Xian turtle. Little gold and metal in the hall were mostly eaten by Little Gold. As for the lightning winged dragon, it was soaking in a ball of golden blood. It seemed like it wanted to use the power of the pure dragon blood to remove the impurities in its body. Only Xiaori didn't need anything. As long as it could sniff around his body every day, it would be satisfied and happy. Zhong Shou could only collect those dragon pellets, a total of 300, as well as those dragon tendons that Hanshi couldn't burn away with the silver flames. He wasn't interested in the dragon bones. Those claws and teeth could be used to craft artifacts. As for the dragon bones, be it used to make medicine or to sell, they were all great. However, if it was the latter, Ao Kuen would probably come and kill him. It was best if he left these bones here and let them rest in peace. He reached out and patted Ran Huang's body. His body still stood tall and didn't fall. He took off the Juntian breastplate and Juntian vambrace. TSK, another dead person's item. Although he said that the items in his hands were undoubtedly treasures that could only be found and not sought after. Zhong Shou's hands burned with flames as he carefully purified the 2 pieces of armor. He hesitated slightly, and in the end, he couldn't resist the temptation, consoling himself as he put on the chest and arm armor. The 3 pieces of armor were resonating with one another from afar. The moment Zhong Shou put it on, the joints of the armor started to buckle and lock one another. An extremely overbearing intent suddenly charged into Zhong Shaoxin's spiritual sense at this moment. Like a wave sweeping over, it was like a hot knife through butter. Compared to the Avicii throne that Zhong Shou obtained, it was several times stronger. Luckily, at this moment, his heart realm cultivation was far from what it was before. After the initial defeat, he was able to gather his spiritual sense to go up against it and block it step by step. Zhong Shou frowned slightly and knew that this was left behind by the Wu Dao King. Just as he was about to think of a way to resolve it, he felt this strong spiritual sense retreat like a wave, disappearing without a trace. Sensing it carefully, he could still feel threads of spiritual sense remaining in the armor. Comprehension rose up in his heart. If the person who took the armor was of a bloodline of an alien race or an instant space dragon race, he would most probably be wiped out by this strike. Who knows if this was left behind by the Wudao king or this ran. Clenching his fist once more, Zhongsho's eyes were filled with surprise. A pair of Juntian fist armor could double his strength. Along with this pair of armor, not only did his strength double, but it tripled. What shocked him the most was the red flames. After the three of them merged into one, the intensity was even higher than his lightning blaze, thousand flash. And this armor, the moment he wore it, he felt a similar energy to the Xuanwu body protecting energy spread out around his body. It was firm and thick, even comparable to that blue fire Xian turtle. If I had these two items, even if Fang Zheng rushed over, he would still be able to kill me. If he fought Su Rang, he would have a 70% chance of escaping unscathed. However, following which Zhongsho frowned. He couldn't seem to take off this set of armor. Chapter 819. Outside of the Dragon Hall, the hundreds of spirit cultivators were nowhere to be seen. All that was left was an empty chariot, as well as the broken pieces of magic treasures. Fang Jue stood in the air with his arms behind his back, smiling as he looked into the distance. The glow in his eyes flickered such that no one knew what he was thinking about. Beside him stood one more person. It was a teen holding a sword. There were dozens of Lu Hanyan's old subordinates, and they were all really respectful to him. Only this person stood shoulder to shoulder with him. It was like he didn't care about Fang Jue's identity as a Saint Realm venerable and his authority as the Sanyan Hall head. I see that young master has no intention of fighting for the Lu family head position. Fang Jue, it is best if your plans don't end up in vain. Oh, Fang Jue was slightly surprised, and then he burst out laughing. Before you came, weren't you really unwilling? Why did you suddenly care? Since I am standing here, then you have already tied me up. The young man let out a cold snort. His expression also became strange, especially his eyes, which shone with a blue glow. Moreover, looking at young master, he does indeed have the talent to be the head of 800 worlds. If he can't return, even I will feel pity for the sky-burning Lu family. How could such a person be left outside? There were endless disputes within the Lu clan. Each of them formed their own cliques, and there were signs of them falling apart. In 10,000 years, due to the internal conflicts, the elites have all died. Since great senior ancestor went into seclusion to try for End Realm, there hasn't been any expansion in 3,000 years. Only such a person can rule heaven and earth and sweep away the monster aura. I didn't expect you to have such high hopes for him. Fang Jue laughed. His expression was really calm. However, there is no need to worry about this matter. Let nature take its course. Let nature take its course. The teen was stunned, and then he didn't understand. Let nature take its course. Only to hear Fang Jue ask, if young master wants to save little miss, would he have a conflict with our Lu family? Lu Jianxian also understood with a hint and instantly understood. Then he smiled as well. That is true. The few old antiques in the family have always placed a lot of emphasis on the family rules. Those people also won't see the day when the case of Sister Han Yin will be overturned. If he harbored such ambitions, it would most likely cause quite a stir. If he really succeeded, the entire clan would be shocked. At that time, even if young master is unwilling, the few holy venerates of our Lu clan who live in seclusion will definitely make him do so. Fang Jue smiled. Actually, there is no need to wait until then. At this moment, the imperial palace is already in chaos. Is it the register of direct descendants? The young man's reaction was not bad either. His eyes narrowed dangerously. There should still be 4 days until the time of the ancestor worship. How could those people not be alarmed by such an unforeseen event? If he still doesn't know, then he wouldn't be qualified to hold the power of the Lu family. At this moment, they were probably investigating the young master's background. Even the transfer order is on its way. Fang Jue said leisurely. Therefore, young master's trouble has already arrived. It's most likely going to happen in a few days. Lu Jianxian frowned. Are you not afraid of destroying the young lord? I'm helpless. You don't think that I have the ability to make this happen, right? One couldn't see any helplessness on Fang Jue's face. Instead, he was a little excited. However, to the young master, it might not be a bad thing. Like how spirit masters refine swords. Some sword embryos aren't of much use and would break if they were slightly forged. Some sword embryos would become sharper the more they are forged. As he said this, he smiled as he looked into the air. Old friend, am I right? In the air, a dissatisfied snort could be heard. Fang Jue didn't care at all. Instead, he laughed out loud. In just a moment, a golden light broke through the layers of worlds and landed in front of Fang Jue. It was a purple gold talisman. Without Fang Jue taking it, it opened up on its own. It didn't cover up, but only Fang Jue could see the runes within. In just a few breaths, his face was filled with a cold, mocking expression. He waved his sleeves, causing the talisman to burn without a flame. I really guessed it right. Country ruler Xianhua ordered me to move the army to accompany him to conquer Guiming world. Lu Jinshuan's face sunk. His expression was really solemn. Then, he looked into the dragon hall silently. Moving Fang Jue away, was he already prepared to act? What fast movements, what ruthless methods. He wondered if this distant cousin of his would be able to survive this storm. Pretty much at the same time, within the instant space dragon hall, a pair of twin sisters who had separated from Zong, shown not long ago, stared at one another with their eyes wide open. After a moment of standstill, Yi Feishuang couldn't take it anymore and tilted her head away guiltily. She said in an annoyed tone, Anyway, that fellow isn't a good person. However, for some reason, under Yi Fei's serious and determined gaze, Yi Feishuang felt short of breath. Her voice was also lacking in energy. With his ability, he could have dealt with those scum in just a few swords. Why did he have to drag it out until then? No, if he didn't wait for Jia Hongji, that bastard, to expose himself, you would probably still treat him as your big brother. Yi Fei scoffed and didn't think much of it. Moreover, from start to finish, Brother Shou didn't try to hide it. You're the one who misunderstood, but you still want to blame others. Mother said that you have to judge yourself before you judge others. Didn't we hide things from Brother Shou? Mother again? Also, he is obviously younger than you. Yi Feishuang rubbed her forehead with a headache. She noticed that she was becoming more and more helpless with her sister. A moment later, she sighed with a lonely expression. It isn't that I am unwilling, but that I have already troubled him too much. I feel that it is inappropriate to ask him for help with our matters. In the future, when we meet him, we will be lower than him. So that is the case. You are worried that Brother Shou will look down on you? Yi Fei covered her lips and gave out a weird smile. I don't think it is bad. If Brother Shou treats us as friends, he will naturally help. If not, or if it is inconvenient, he will reject it. There's nothing wrong with asking. It's just that you're thinking too much. Yi Feishuang's face flushed red, and then she entered deep thought. Did she really need to ask Zong Shou to help? With his current strength that could suppress celestial realm experts and his identity as the young master of the Lu family, those matters could really be easily resolved. However, was that really appropriate? Or was she thinking too much? A moment later, she shook her head. I still need to think about this matter. In her heart, she was still a little unwilling. She really didn't want to Zong Shou more. As expected, I can't take it off. Within the hall that was filled with dragon bones, Zong Shou's brows were furrowed. He thought of all sorts of methods, even letting Little Gold try to swallow this half of the Juntian flame armor, but to no avail. You fellow, who asked you to be so greedy? When I needed you, you couldn't help. Zong Shou used his hand to viciously smack Little Gold's body, and the latter's face also revealed a wronged expression. At this moment, Little Gold had turned into a jelly state once more. As for his body, it had also grown by more than 10 times. It was even a head taller than Zong Shou. Its body looked soft, but when Zong Shou smacked it, he could feel that it was really hard. The recoil caused his hand to feel numb. Who knows how much spiritual iron it had swallowed? Anyways, it looked like it had eaten too much and couldn't digest it, unable to move. That little puppy ran around Little Gold. It used its claws to trample on Little Gold's body. Occasionally, it would raise its head and laugh out loud like it was gloating. In the past, Little Gold had played with this puppy so badly. Now that it could bully it back, it was naturally delighted. Zhongsho sighed. There was nothing he could do about the Juntian flame armor on his body. Just now he tried. Only when his spiritual sense charged into the armor to go against the remnant spiritual sense of Ranwu King did he manage to loosen the locks on the joints. It was most probably like the Avicii throne, needing to totally wipe out the mark of the previous master to be able to truly control it. There's another way, which is to chop off my hands. I don't believe that I can't take it off. His heart was filled with hatred, hesitating whether or not to attack. Zhongsho had an idea and focused on his hands once more. He saw that the Juntian flame armor was slowly merging into his skin. That heaven-covering flame was nowhere to be seen. Touching it with his hands, not only could he see the texture of his skin, but there was also no difference when he touched it. It was like this set of armor didn't exist. However, with a thought from Zhongshoxin, this half set of armor appeared once more. It can actually do that? Although this armor was really simple, apart from runes, there were no other patterns or decorations. However, it had many uses. Zhongsho didn't bother much about it. Actually, this was the only thing he could do now. At this moment, he suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. On a whim, he only felt numerous evil intentions surging over from the void. It caused Zhongsho to nearly suffocate. Who knows where it came from? Was it because of this Juntian flame armor? It most probably had nothing to do with that. Instead, the bloodline in his body was restless. That was the Lu family sky burning blood. Zhongsho was startled. He finally understood. He finally understood why he felt that something wasn't right. Why did he feel like he was schemed against by Fangjue? A kid with no background and no strength. Even if he was in the Lu family direct bloodline register, he wouldn't have the right to fight with the elites of the Lu family. Those people in power in the Lu family probably wouldn't care either. However, once he had the support of his mother's old forces and the help of the Tsungyan God Hall, the meaning would be totally different. Zhongsho couldn't help but grind his teeth. No wonder when he rejected outside of the Dragon Hall, Fangjue didn't say anything to persuade him. That was because he knew that even if Zhongsho didn't fight, others might not let him off. This person's thoughts were really terrifying. An extreme sense of danger rose up in his heart. His background in the cloud world was something that others could easily find out. This time, if he couldn't grasp more strength before the danger arrived, he might really die. Chapter 8:21. Taking in a deep breath, Zhongsho tried to calm himself down. What was done, so there was no point in regretting. Like what Fangjue said, no matter how unwilling he was, he couldn't break away from his connection with the sky-burning Lu family. He was totally passive and had no way to break it. However, if Fangjue was still in front of him, no matter whether or not he could beat him, Zhongsho would still punch him. This person was just too infuriating. This person most probably did this on purpose. He was swept into this storm when Fangjue wanted to bring his mother's old subordinates to meet him. Clenching his fists tightly, Zhongsho gritted his teeth so hard that they creaked. In the end, he sighed and looked around. Everything here had already been looted by him and his spirit pets. Apart from dragon bones, there wasn't a single valuable thing. 12,900 dragon teeth, of which more than 900 are the sharpest canine teeth. There are also 397 dragon pellets. These things were all taken from different dragon species. The highest 4 could reach Saint Realm. The lowest was above Celestial Realm. The battle here caused the instant space dragon race to suffer heavy losses, and their elites were all killed. If I can refine these dragon pellets into a treasure, I'm afraid its power would be incredible. Do I have to head to Tianfeng World to find that landlord Qin? However, to craft such an artifact, even if I go bankrupt, I won't be able to afford it. Moreover, when such a top celestial artifact appears, it is easy for people to covet it. Unless I have Tsang Xingdao, that half-saint venerable, to protect me, or master comes out of seclusion. Zhongsho's lips instinctively twitched. That was basically impossible. A set of Juntian flame armor could allow Ranwu King to go up against End Realm experts. Song Xingdao's 7 celestial swords also caused Song Xingdao's Saint Realm strength to far exceed people of the same grade. Even if he had one less, the incomplete sword formation formed by 6 swords could go up against End Realm experts. From this, one could see how popular such celestial treasures were. Refining a top-rank immortal artifact of such a level would probably cause the entire region to be alarmed, and it wasn't beneficial to Song Xingdao and Long Ying at all. On the contrary, when the weapon was completed, too much power would be tied down, giving others an opportunity to take advantage of it. Therefore, Zhongsho, it was better not to think about such a good thing. In any case, he wouldn't be able to use it even if he succeeded. However, just as he was about to put these things away and put them aside for the time being, his heart skipped a beat. He thought back to the millions of stars in his soul ocean. His Dharma idol was the black and white holes. These stars were the manifestation of his 18 forbidden talisman laws and the power of the black and white holes. They adorned the soul sea space. It caused the void in his heart to be incomparably brilliant. They were also true intent seeds. Each star contained a type of Tao. If Zhongsho wanted to, he could upgrade it and condense it into a new talisman spirit seed at any time. Zhongsho had checked it out before. Without exception, these stars were all related to time and space and the black and white holes. That was because all the Daos in the world could be merged into yin and yang and couldn't be separated from the word space and yin. I remember that the Taoist faction had a cycle of heaven star falling technique to look at the stars in the sky to form in Dharma and martial path true intent. In the past, Xiao Xiangzi used this technique to merge martial path intent into his Tao. How amazing! Zhongsho was in deep thought. He remembered that he had collected several copies of this technique. In the Taoist faction, there were many cultivators who cultivated this technique. A few months ago, the successive battles wiped out dozens of sects and killed numerous Taoist faction cultivators. He also obtained many Taoist faction techniques, amongst which there were dozens of versions of the cycle of Heaven Star falling technique that landed in his hands. Unfortunately, I only have the form and not the spirit. Moreover, my realm is still too low. I heard that after the Dharma is formed, it needs to merge into the outside world. It needs to manifest the soul ocean void outside. It can borrow the power of the stars in the sky. Each bit of starlight is a Tao technique. It can be arranged into a formation. What I don't fear the most is group battles. Even spirit masters can go head-to-head with martial cultivators. Without hesitation, Zhongsho flipped out those books. In the past, he felt that these books weren't original. Moreover, most of them were incomplete or the crucial parts were removed. He didn't pay much attention to them. At this moment, he was really serious as he flipped through them one by one. The most important part was merging into the Dharma to form the Dharma and restructure the contents of the void within the soul. His Dharma was the black and white holes. However, it wouldn't be used for long. On the contrary, the true intent seeds that were formed from the soul ocean could be used. Thinking about it, it was a little similar to the great cycle of stars falling art. A few hours later, Zhongsho's eyes flashed with joy. The Taoist faction secret technique is really magical. There is actually such an artifact crafting technique. Merging the Dharma with the Dharma, in the end, it would become a life treasure. It was an existence on the same level as the second soul. However, it was much stronger than the illusionary spirit sword crafting technique that Zhongsho usually didn't use. It was true that these books weren't complete, but it allowed Zhongsho to find some clues. Only items that are compatible with the Dharma are really tough to find. Those who cultivate this path have to have the help of Dowling Vast Habitat. If not, they would have to spend most of their time searching for items that are compatible with the Dharma. However, once it was formed, its strength would be unbelievably huge, and it had huge potential. It also included everything, going from simple to complicated creating a star world that could also be compatible with the Tao. Other people would have to search all around, but to me, it isn't a problem. 397 dragon cores were enough. Using a Saint Realm dragon pellet to craft a life artifact. Who in the world would have such confidence? The instant space dragon race grasped a portion of space and time loss. This was why they were known as the top dragon race, and were at the top of the true Dragonine races. Their dragon pellets also contained these laws and Daos. They were perfectly compatible with the stars in his soul ocean. What Zhongsho needed to do was to merge the corresponding spells into these dragon pellets. He didn't ask for it to be like the true cycle of heaven star falling technique, which could cover all spells. He only asked that the life artifact of power was strong enough. All the stars were instant space abilities, so there was nothing wrong with it being a little pure. He couldn't get the true cycle of heaven star falling technique, but he could simplify it into the cycle of heaven star falling technique. With his current cultivation, he could definitely do it. His future achievements might not be weaker than the true star falling technique. In the end, his life artifact was still the black and white holes. I have never dared to use the Book of Ian. However, if I use this book as the core of the formation to activate my life artifact. Zhongsho's eyes became brighter and brighter, like the stars in the sky. Under the life and death pressure that was about to strike him, his thoughts became more and more flexible. Many wonderful thoughts kept popping up in his mind. This was the first time he felt like he saw the hope of reaching the peak of the Grand Tao. It was also like he had grabbed the key to his destiny. There is no harm in trying. Even if something isn't right, even if it doesn't affect the foundations, I can stop it in time. Who knows when the Liu family people will find their way over. I have to act quickly on this matter. Let's start refining from those celestial realm dragon pellets. Anyways, let's leave this place first. He stood there quietly. Who knows how much time had passed. Zhongsho's thoughts slowly came back to their senses. I have a use for the dragon pellets, but what about those dragon teeth? How about selling them? Why not craft them into a sword formation? It can't be used as a life artifact, but it can be used to defend. Even along with that star-falling formation, it is not bad. However, my formation path attainments are still a little weak. Master isn't good at it, but if one is good at it, then one is good at all. However, he is already in secluded meditation. It seems like I can only find Kong Rue, or that landlord Chun, to design a sword formation for me. Kong Rue's formation path was really strong, but Zhongsho felt that as compared to that indiscernible landlord Chun, he was still a little weaker. He had one more person under him, Zhang Huai, who had the potential to be a formation path expert. However, this person's cultivation hadn't broken through to spirit realm, and he was also distracted by administrative matters, so he could only look forward to the future. If this person's master was willing to help him, it would be a good choice. The reason why he wanted him to design a sword formation and not help him craft artifacts. It was because he wanted to personally polish and refine these dragon teeth. The surrounding space-time power changed once more. Zhongsho didn't suppress it this time. He allowed this power to bring him out of the dragon hall at the heart of the mountain. Then, he noticed that he was at the foot of the giant mountain once more. I have to climb up once more? Zhongshoxin was delighted. Not only did he gain a lot this time, but he also gained a lot. Even Little Gold, Hanshi, and the others also had their fill. When he broke through to spirit realm, numerous comprehensions of the Tao were fed back to these natural protector beasts. These few things were all going all out to accumulate to raise their grade. Today's trip to the Instant Space Dragon Hall, be it those spiritual fruits or the dragon corpse flesh and blood in the Dragon Hall, it would shorten this process by a large amount. At this moment, they were all well-behaved and stayed in his spiritual beast bag. After they digested it, it would be time for them to advance. If there were such benefits, then no matter how many times he climbed this giant mountain, he was willing to do so. Along the way up, there weren't many changes. There weren't hundreds of instant space dragon pellets in the Dragon Hall, but there were many spiritual fruits and spiritual herbs. There were also many useless dragon race artifacts. However, at this moment, be it Zhongsho or his spiritual pets, they weren't interested at all. After eating their fill, Why would they care about these tasteless snacks that were a waste to throw away? As for the Mind Stones that Zhongsho was looking forward to, there wasn't even a single one. Without any surprise or danger, he stepped onto the peak of the giant mountain. At the waist of the mountain, at the start, Zhongsho found it tough to move forward. Often, he wouldn't be able to move forward for 2 to 4 hours. However, once he understood the formation here and compared it to the Book of Ian, comprehending it one by one, it slowly became much easier. It is called Instant Space Dragon and not Universe Dragon. As expected, there's a reason behind it. The Instant Space Dragon race's space-time ability did indeed have many flaws. The Book of Ian was far above it. 10 days later, when Zhongsho stepped onto the peak, he saw a broken hall appear in front of him. Chapter 822. This place is most probably the so-called Universe Light Hall. Looking out, he saw that only the main body of the hall was more or less completed. However, the eaves at the side were still lacking a corner. The side halls at the sides only had a rough outline. Similar to his royal demon god boat, it was also made up of numerous parts. Many parts that were crafted separately could be called a celestial treasure. At this moment, before Zhongsho even got close, he felt that the Book of Ian Extreme Life in his body was reacting. This thing is actually a replica of the Book of Ian Extreme Life. The two treasures resonated with one another. It was obvious that they were connected. Zhongsho walked over, and just as he was about to enter the hall, he suddenly stopped. He saw 2 talismans pasted outside the door. Looking at the situation, it didn't look like it was left from 10,000 years ago, but from just a day ago. Zhongsho frowned and took off one of the talismans. As expected, it was a message from Fan and Fei Shuang. Although ruler isn't from the instant space dragon race, your martial path has reached the soul realm. Your cultivation is deep and indiscernible. I can only look up to you. It shouldn't be difficult for you to reach the peak, which is why you left the talisman here. Fan and Fei Shuang thank you for saving our lives. Although we don't dare to say that we can repay you, we will definitely remember it in our hearts. Today, we have other matters and will take our leave first. Please forgive us for leaving without saying goodbye. There is also the location of a treasury in the Instant Space Dragon Hall. Maybe it can help you. Just like Fei Shuang's style, she was really strict and kept people thousands of miles away. Zhongsho sighed and then swept his spiritual sense into another talisman. Fan's innocent and ethereal voice rang out in his ears. Brother Sho, this time sister pulled me away again. What a waste. I originally wanted to say so much to you. However, sister didn't let me, and she is still quarreling with you. Woo, I really want to cry. I really don't want to leave, but mother is dead and there is no news of uncle. Sister only has me now, how pitiful. Within the talisman, Yi Fan muttered a lot. Many trivial matters, as well as the experiences of the past few years, poured out. However, it wasn't annoying. Instead, it was cute and made people feel pity for it. Zhongsho shook his head and put away the 2 talismans. He saw this pair of sisters as his friends in adversity, especially Yi Fan. Because her personality was similar to Chu Shui's, he had always treated her as a younger sister. Since he had met them, he could not ignore the matter of these sisters. However, he still couldn't figure out what was going on. At the start, he thought that the 2 of them had something to do with the dragon spirit fairy that Juelong City was attacking. A few years later, it involved the first Dragon Palace and the third Dragon Palace. The hornless ice dragon in the water fairy lake had also become their puppet. At this moment, he realized that the reason why the 2 of them were fleeing wasn't because of the Instant Space Dragon Hall. Even Ao Kuan had entrusted him to look after her. Who exactly were these 2 girls? It was really puzzling. Fan and Fei Shuang didn't ask for help at all. However, as long as one wasn't blind and deaf, one would be able to sense the tragic situation. Unfortunately, at this moment, he had to prepare to deal with the Liu family and couldn't be distracted. However, there was a need to investigate this matter in detail to find out the cause and effect. Zhongsho was deep in thought and then felt helpless. His strength was only comparable to the cloud world. The only person he could rely on was Tsang Xingdao. It wasn't appropriate for him to ask for help for his own personal matters. Within the Tianfang world, there were many cultivation factions that could be hired, but they weren't reliable. Thinking about it, there was only one person who could help him, Tsangyan Hall head Fang Jue. Scoffing, Zhongsho chased that name out of his mind. He thought to himself that he should think about this matter from the long term. He was originally worried about how to draw the line with this person. If he joined in now, wouldn't he be falling right into his trap? After walking into the Universe Light Hall, Zhongsho looked around and was enlightened. This place is really a good place to cultivate. Looking at the structure of the hall, it was indeed a copy of the Book of Ian and could also speed up the flow of time. The four walls were carved with the mysteries of the instant space dragon race. Within the main hall, there was a complete formation with a full 81 dragon veins gathered here. It caused the spiritual energy within 100,000 feet to be no weaker than that of the vast habitat. Maybe it couldn't be used to fight, but in terms of cultivation, this Universe Light Hall was much stronger than his Book of Ian. However, to activate this hall and speed up time, one needed enough Mind Stones. No wonder Fayin said that without enough Saint Realm experts here, the value of this hall would be greatly reduced. As long as there are more than 5 instant space dragon race venerables maintaining it, not only can it display the various mysteries of space for juniors to comprehend, but it can also speed up time by 10 times. If there weren't any Saint Realm venerables, just using it like that would consume the same amount of Mind Stones, but it could only speed up time by 2 to 4 times. As it covered the entire Universe Light Hall, it consumed a lot of Mind Stones. However, these 5 Saint Realm venerables who grasped space techniques, not to mention his Deqian, but even Tsang Xingdao, couldn't take them out. What a waste. I have the Book of Ian, and this item is useless. However, am I just going to abandon it like that? I remember that Brother Ao Kuan has turned on the instant space dragon race. I can't just give this item to the enemy? Zhongsho hesitated slightly and then thought back to Gantian Mountain, his Irin Kong Yao. Taking it back to be a country protecting treasure is not bad. 5 Saint Realm venerables. Naturally, he couldn't take out Deqian and Tsang Xingdao. However, if he let the Buddhist faction and the Kinzo sect join in, each of the 3 factions could send out one person. Not only would they be able to maintain the running of the Universe Light Hall, but they would also have an excuse to ask for Mind Stone supplies from the 3 factions. This Universe Light Hall was huge and could hold 1,000 people to cultivate within. He didn't believe that the Buddhist faction and the Kinzo sect wouldn't be tempted. In the future, if the instant space dragon race came knocking for this item, the 3 factions would work together to block them. He didn't need to face them alone. Zhongshoxin made up his mind and started to cast spells. He spread out his soul power to cover the entire hall. His hands changed in front of his body, guiding the air as he cast out many seals. There were no restrictions within the hall, and no one was in charge. To him, it was like there was no defense at all. Threads of soul sense and true chi formed into threads that stretched into the vital parts of the Universe Light Hall. Rise! With a soft shout, Zhongsho used his spiritual sense, and the entire Universe Light Hall was lifted up. Just as Zhongsho was casting more seals to condense the Universe Light Hall bit by bit. However, he suddenly felt a strong sense of danger penetrating into his heart. There seemed to be a few strong intents that were filled with panic and surprise. They were rushing over to search. None of them were weaker than Ao Kuan and Fang Jue. Zhongsho's eyes squinted. Then, he didn't hesitate to explode all the Mind Stones in his heaven and earth bag. He forcefully activated the Book of Ian, and a blue light spread out, blocking off this space and even the entire 3rd Dragon Hall from the outside world. In just 2 short moments, hundreds of Xian grade Mind Stones were turned into dust. The spiritual energy that spread out didn't last for even a breath. The Universe Light Hall was at the last moment when the Book of Ian was maintaining the barrier. It finally turned into a green light and landed in Zhongsho's hands. It was as heavy as 20 summer mountains, but in Zhongsho's hands, it was less than the size of a palm, like a wooden model. He kept it and totally covered its aura. The danger that he felt in his chest instantly dissipated by a large amount. I can't stay here for long. Although those few people haven't found their way over, they know the location. At most 3 to 5 days, and they will be able to arrive here. The longer I stay, the easier it is for them to notice me. Without hesitation, Zhong Shou flashed. Like what Fei Shuang said, he headed over to the instant space dragon race treasure room. Just now, he activated the Book of Ian to cover the entire dragon hall, pretty much every corner. The Book of Ian was a time treasure and coincidentally countered this place. Zhong Shou also understood a large portion of the mysteries of the restrictions here. Because of this, he was able to move about freely, and in just a moment, he found it. He didn't take a close look before he swept up the treasury within the cave. In a few blinks of an eye, he was at another place. He was in front of Li Fengfei, not waiting for her to speak. He didn't say anything and just waved his sleeves, wrapping him up. Just like that, his body flashed dozens of times, and he brought the other two to his side. Like light and shadow, he shot out of the third dragon hall, only to see that outside of the hall, Fang Jue and the Lu family people were nowhere to be seen. Zhong Shou didn't care and didn't bother. He activated the royal demon flying ship and swiftly flew out of this dragon hall space. At the start, Li Fengfei and the other two didn't know what he was doing. However, they knew that Zhong Shou definitely had a reason for doing that. This was why they went all out to help to speed up the ship. Then, Zhong Shou didn't care about consumption to leave 20 worlds away from Xuansong World. Then, he sent the royal demon god shuttle into the depths of Xiwang Ocean. He borrowed some mind stones from the three of them to form a formation outside of the ship, covering their aura and spiritual sense. The three of them felt a few vast spiritual senses spreading out from the direction of Xuansong World. They searched inch by inch, even not caring about consuming their souls to reach into Xiwang Ocean. Only then did their expressions change and become ashen white. If he had been a step too late, it would have been hard to say what would have happened. Li Fengfei was startled for a moment before he looked towards Zhong Shou with a questioning gaze. Zhong Shou didn't intend to hide anything, taking out the Universe Light Hall. Although the instant space dragon race lost the inherited dragon hall, they can sense this treasure. I was too careless and startled those old dragons. Speaking of which, all of you were dragged down by me. Luckily, this time I was able to escape in time. When the three of them heard this, their expressions changed once more. Li Fengfei laughed bitterly. They can actually sense it after 10,000 years. What a joke that Jia Hongji actually wanted to take this item to claim credit from Juelong Celestial Region. Luckily, the ruler stopped us, otherwise we would have died without a burial place. If that was the case, based on their agreement with Jia Hongji, they would have already died. Chapter 823. The instant space dragon hall didn't allow alien races to enter. If there was a chance, they could take it. However, if the treasure of the race was taken by others, then the situation would be different. They would be forming huge animosity. No matter how generous the instant space dragon race was, they wouldn't show any mercy. Moreover, 15,000 years later, the methods of the top dragon race were different from 10,000 years ago. During the Cloud Desolate era, the 9 types of true dragons, the 4 dragon palaces were giving to the cultivators of the various worlds and looked down on them. 15,000 years later, they were wary and wary, trying their best to suppress them. Misfortune is a blessing in disguise. Zhong Shou smiled, accepting the gratitude of the three of them. If he didn't have the Book of Ian to block at the crucial moment, his life and death would be uncertain. Following this, he casually tossed the Universe Light Hall in front of Li Fengfei. Due to the Taoist faction, I can't return to the Cloud World. Once the news passes, I will have to trouble the three of you to bring it back to Gantia Mountain. The three of them exclaimed as they looked at Zhong Shou in disbelief. He handed such an important celestial treasure to them, just like that. Don't doubt the people you use. I won't say such words to confuse people. This item is useless to you and will cause trouble. I am confident that no matter where you hide, I will be able to find you in the future. All of you should know my methods. Instead, if you bring it back to Gantian Mountain, the three of you won't need to take any risks and can comprehend the instant space ability in the Universe Light Hall. Li Fengfei thought about it, and it was true. Even if they swallowed this item, they wouldn't get any special benefits. Be it the Liu family or Saint Venerable Long Ying, they were enough to make one worry. Take this item and join the Taoist faction or other powers. Zhongshou might not be able to do anything to them, but if he wanted to find trouble with them, no one would be able to stop him. Unless they hid for the rest of their lives. The risk was too huge, and it wasn't worth it. Han Ming's eyes flashed, and he said in a low voice, "We will definitely not disappoint the monarch. If anything happens to this treasure, we will immediately take action. If anything happens, I will pay with my life." "That's great." Zhongshou nodded. Then he wrote 3 more communication talismans in the void and handed them to Li Fengfei. "If you return to the cloud world, the 3 of you can each take this talisman. Requesting an audience with Common People Palace Lord Shui Lingbo, Wujua Manor Lord Yin Fan, and 10,000 Buddha Vast Habitat Elder Ci Fawn. You have to remember that the person in front of you must be a bit faster than the other 2. Only if Tsang Shengdao intervened first could the safety of the Universal Light Hall be guaranteed." Although he was cooperating with the Kenzo sect, he trusted their characters. However, he still had to take precautions, even if it was just in case. However, the 3 of them did not know what was going on. Today, whatever Zhongshou said, they would do as they were told. Even though he had doubts, he could only suppress them for the time being. That Saint Realm's spiritual sense was still searching outside. After searching for half a day, perhaps because they were unable to find anything, they had no choice but to give up and retreat. The 4 of them heaved a sigh of relief. However, no one talked about leaving Shuang Ocean. This matter was far from over. Those few instant space dragon race Saint Realm experts definitely wouldn't give up so easily. Who knows, there might be instant space dragon race experts waiting outside Shuang Ocean. Even if it was just one God Realm expert, it was enough to make the 4 of them regret it. Zhongshou was smiling. Before he left, he used the Book of Ian to wipe away all traces of him. Before this, only the Canyon Hall head had appeared in the instant space dragon hall. Fang Jue had schemed against him once, and he had also framed him. As expected, his mood became much better. Actually, he couldn't hide it for too long. However, at that time, the 3 factions share this item. Even if the instant space dragon race knew about it, there was nothing they could do. At this moment, the dragon race was not as strong as 10,000 years ago. They even needed the Taoist sect to work together and even betray Ao Kuan to be able to live peacefully. From this, one could see the decline of this race. The outside world was already calm, and Zhongshou finally had some time to check what he had gotten from the so-called treasure trove. When his spiritual sense swept across, Zhongshou's expression changed. In an instant, it became really ugly. There were indeed a lot of things inside. However, it was similar to what he had obtained on the giant mountain. It was either spiritual fruits and herbs or tools that were exclusive to the instant space dragon race. There were also some strange things, but most of them were of no use to him. They were stored in that cave to be replenished. Right, after all, this is just the legacy hall. The dragon race has matured and studied the abilities of their race. Although it is important, it isn't an important place. How could there be so many mind stones left here? Zhongshou shook his head and mocked himself. However, a few different colored stones appeared in his hand. They were all half the size of a palm. This was the only thing he was confused about. This item looked like a mind stone, crystal clear. However, when he used his spiritual sense to investigate, he didn't sense anything at all. There was also no spiritual energy that seeped out. It was like a normal stone. However, Zhongshou could feel the shocking spiritual energy within. In the entire treasure trove, there were only 150 of such stones. However, they were placed in the most restricted area of the entire treasure trove. Playing with it in his hand, the doubt in Zhongshou's eyes grew thicker and thicker. Li Fengfei, who was opposite him, sucked in a cold breath when she saw the situation and exclaimed, "It is actually a low-grade celestial stone?" Zhong Shaoxin's head jumped up and he was enlightened. Then, joy appeared in his eyes. However, the mocking expression on his face became thicker. So it was this item. Zhong Shou was really ignorant and didn't have much knowledge. The crystallization of spiritual energy from heaven and earth was a mind stone. However, it could only reach high-grade Xian. Moreover, unless this item was nurtured in a spiritual vein or a place where the origin spirit was strong. The spirit within the stone would slowly dissipate as time passed. The process was slow, but even if it was high-grade Xian, after 10,000 years, it wouldn't be much stronger than yellow-grade mind stones. As for these celestial stones, they were the product of people with high cultivation refining and purifying normal mind stones. Inside, there was an exquisite spirit storage formation and also a spirit gathering formation. It was separated from the outside, like it was a small heaven and earth. Not only would there be no spiritual energy dissipating, but if it was used up, it could be slowly replenished. The amount of spiritual energy was 10 times that of Xian grade mind stones. However, these things were already totally extinct in the cloud world. Even if they were in the hands of the few factions and Saint Realm experts. In his last life, it was impossible for him to come into contact with them. Zhong Shou couldn't help but laugh out loud. This was what they meant by lose on the swings and gain on the roundabouts. Although 150 low-grade celestial stones weren't much, the thousands of high-grade Xian grade mind stones that they had lost these few days were all made up for. He had underestimated the instant space dragon race. At this moment, why would the top race of the 9 races use mind stones? Such an unconventional thing. Luckily, he didn't ask today, otherwise, he would have really embarrassed himself. Chapter 824. This is the void in my heart, the manifestation of the Dharma world. Outside the void world, Zhong Shou's expression was solemn as he looked at the tens of thousands of stars in front of him. The black and white holes were hidden, and only the stars in the soul ocean were revealed by Zhong Shou. It was bright and eye-catching, but it was different from the true universe star falling technique. The latter referred to the stars in the sky and could borrow their power. However, Zhong Shou didn't know what it was like within his soul ocean. Then, the Dharma that appeared on the outside. It was just like that. It had nothing to do with the stars in the various worlds. However, it was equally bright. Each star was a Tao seed. Although it was derived from space and time, it also contained the 5 elements. However, at this moment, what Zhong Shou paid the most attention to was the 24 instant space dragon pellets that had merged into his Dharma soul. At this moment, 2 months had passed. Zhong Shou rode the royal demon flying shuttle and hid in Shuang Ocean with Li Fengfei and the other 2 for a full 2.5 months. Only then did they run out from Shuang Ocean once more. As expected, the instant space dragon race had totally given up on searching. It was really calm outside. During these 77 days, he spent all of his time on these dragon cores. He even didn't mind using those celestial stones that he didn't get easily to try to use the universe light hall. He sped it up for a month, allowing Li Fengfei and the others to gain many benefits. Luckily, such celestial stones only needed a few bits of source spirit to be able to recover on their own and be recycled. If they were placed in a place like the common people's vast habitat, they would be able to recover in just a month. Not long ago, Zhong Shou had just said goodbye to the 3 of them. Only now did he have the intention to take a look at the instant space star falling technique that he had researched for close to a year to see how effective it was. This great technique was very likely one of his trump cards. Therefore, even in front of the 3 reverends, he didn't reveal a single bit of it. The Taoist faction's heavenly cycle secret star falling technique is that each star is a spell. At its peak, tens of millions of stars fell. Not only did it have the strength of 10 million mountains, but it was also equivalent to 10 million spiritual spells that were released at the same time, completely drowning people within. Power was truly terrifying. As for Zhong Shou's instant space starfall art, every star is a type of great Tao. Although I don't know which one of them is better in the future, I still don't know. However, it is beneficial for me to form the Tao word true talisman, going from complex to simple. Looking at the 24 celestial realm dragon pellets, which had turned into stars, Zhong Shoshin chanted out, "Attract." Therefore, in an instant, an extremely strong gravitational force was generated from the star, sucking in everything around it. Even those various beasts that flowed through the world river were all terrified as they were forcefully drawn over. The corners of Zhongsho's lips twitched as he uttered the word reprimand again. As the gravitational force dissipated, another wave of repulsive force was generated from the opposing star. In just an instant, all the items that were sucked over were pushed far away. Attraction and repulsion were great Daos that came from the black and white holes, space techniques. Actually, the two of them came from the same source, a power known as attraction from the future. It was on the same level as space and time. The 24 dragon pellet stars also had a magnetism word which came from the same source. In this era, there were many cultivators who were cultivating. As they came from the same source, Zhongsho didn't use his spiritual sense to display it. Zhongsho's spiritual sense flashed once more, causing this star to instantly calm down. Then, he said the word heavy, and another star lit up. Zhongsho instantly felt his body become 100 times heavier. Even a random action was extremely tough. Compared to the word heavy, it was light. The moment he said this, Zhongsho's body became as light as a swallow, like a feather about to float and fly. Next is strength. A star lit up once more. This time, it merged into his body. Zhongsho punched out. That ferocious fist energy instantly crushed and destroyed the entire world river inch by inch. It didn't recover for a long time. Zhongsho's strength was 38 mountains. Spirit and martial arts merger. Using the completed half of the Juntian armor, he had close to 280 mountains of strength and could go up against intermediate celestial realm experts. When this strength word star merged into his body, in a short time, it caused the strength of his 280 summer mountains to increase by close to double. Unfortunately, this time only lasted for 3 breaths. 3 breaths later, the power of this star was used up. Zhongsho also felt that the vast and surging power in his body was disappearing. What a waste! If I had 2 more breaths, along with my spirit realm killing password intent, I would be able to fight on the same level as late celestial realm experts. However, if I use along with my darkness blooming Sirius, it is not bad. 24 celestial realm dragon pellets meant 24 Daos, 24 laws. They were all born from Zhongsho's Dharma and the 18 talismans. Zhongsho originally didn't ask for a deep understanding, just to be able to understand a little of it. However, all the Daos were connected to one another. There is a saying in the cultivation world that spread like wildfire. If you understand one law, you will understand all laws. With the same logic, if you understood all laws, naturally you would be able to reach the peak of one law. Due to his vast knowledge, when Zhongsho comprehended a Tao, he was able to use evidence from the side to compare with one another. It didn't take long for him to be able to grasp the essence of things. When Zhongsho didn't force himself to be able to fully comprehend, he improved even more quickly. The mysteries here could often be solved elsewhere. If he had problems, he could solve them here. It was also because of this that Zhongsho felt that his instant space star falling technique was really beneficial to his Tao path, towards the Tao word that was indiscernible, hidden deep in the clouds, and couldn't be grasped. Zhongshoxin started to slowly become clear. Even the 18 core talismans of the black and white holes also benefited from this, and became much more perfect, especially the former. When Zhongsho completed the deduction of the guide and rebuked Daos, the aura became more and more majestic, like it was much more real. His entire soul ocean also became exaggerated once more. His cultivation had greatly improved. Every star, every great Tao, they're all like the cycle of heaven star falling technique, not needing any hand seals. With just a thought, it can be instantly cast, enough to catch one off guard. Although I can't borrow the power of the stars in this aspect, it is much better than the secret star falling technique. The heavenly cycle secret star starfall art was just a variety of spiritual arts, while his stars were the Tao itself. Naturally, the difference couldn't be measured with logic. However, the name of this instant space star falling technique is a little inappropriate. Oh, I have the lightning blaze 1000 flash ability. This technique can also be called ability. It is called 3000 star falling, taking the meaning of the 3000 Daos. Zhongshou didn't seek to truly merge with the 3000 Daos. He was already satisfied to be able to use up all 397 dragon pellets. However, how difficult would it be to complete it? Even at this moment, the 24 celestial realm dragon pellets weren't all merged into his soul ocean. If it was completed, he could convert them into illusionary and physical at any moment and merge them into his soul ocean void space. However, at this moment, he only refined a portion of it to be used as an external treasure. When the Dharma appeared, he could use it to cooperate with him to display a portion of the Tao ability. This year of refining was far from enough. Not only did these instant space dragon pellets need to be polished, but Zhongshou also needed to merge some things in. Only then could these Dharma dragon pellets be fully compatible with these Tao stars. Illusionary and physical could be changed as he wished. With a thought, Zhongshou caused all the stars to scatter far away. His body flashed, and he disappeared from the spot. In the next instant, he appeared at another part of the world river. It was where one of the star dragon pellets was. As expected, as long as my Dharma star is distributed, I can change my body at will. This was another ability that was born out of the 3000 star falling technique. The 24 stars were all crafted from instant space dragon pellets. Their minds were connected, causing Zhongshou's body to be able to change between these 24 spots. Similarly, he just needed a thought to activate it. He didn't use soul power, spiritual energy, or any spells. With just a thought, he could teleport. If the various abilities before were to attack, then this was to defend. In battle, he could use this method to avoid the enemy's lethal strike. It would cause the enemy to be unable to grasp his true position. The only weakness was that there were too few stars that could be used to teleport. These dragon pellets that couldn't be converted from illusionary to physical were easily destroyed by experts. However, this was only temporary. If he cultivated this technique to the highest level, naturally he could make up for it. Zhongshou slashed out once more. 1. Origin Sword Universe Light. The nameless sword flashed, and the sword light was 1,000 miles away. It was like the nearby time had lost a few breaths. A 3,000th of an instant ago, Zhongshou hadn't pulled out his sword. A 3,000th of an instant later, the sword light was 1,000 miles away. It gave one the illusion that he missed something. Actually, it was 24 stars buffing at the same time. It caused the time of this sword to be accelerated to the extreme, which was why it created such a scene. What a waste. This sword is fast, but it can't break through to the spirit realm. However, in terms of power, it is above the Killing Path sword intent. Although his Killing Path sword intent and the Universe Light sword weren't on the same level. However, the difference in the laws between the two couldn't be calculated with logic. However, it is not bad. This 3,000 star falling can indeed be used to supplement my foundations. Not only is it a protective ability, but it can also help my foundations. It didn't disappoint me. No, it should be a surprise. Zhongshou's face was filled with glee. He imagined when he was at the Saint Realm. When he slashed out, 3,000 great path stars would fall, and the black and white holes would follow behind. Thus, his smile became brighter and brighter. Even if they were both at the Saint Realm, he would be able to smash them to pieces. At that time, there would be very few people in the world who could make him worry. All right, and this time, he had collected tens of thousands of dragon teeth. Immersed in his thoughts, Zhongshou sighed a moment later. Put away all these messy thoughts. How far away were these things? The so-called stars of the great Tao were only 24, and they were far from complete. At this moment, it was best if he didn't think too much and did the things in front of him well. When Taoist spirit masters reach the celestial realm, they need to form their own dharma. From then on, there would be a huge difference in strength. There would be differences in the dharma Tao. However, they would all rely on their own strength. The higher the dharma, the higher the risk. 7 out of 10 people would fall at this step. If they were lucky, they would be able to reincarnate. If they were unlucky, their souls would scatter. Buddhists are different. When one is at the initial heaven realm, the dharma is formed by looking at the true form of the Buddhas. In the future, one's potential would be suppressed, but it would be safer. Using Buddhist power, one's combat strength wouldn't be weak. Once one reaches the celestial realm, one would form the golden body, which is the true image and nascent soul of the Taoist faction. One who forms the golden body can become a Luohan. Keeping his sword, Zhongsho was in deep thought. Due to my remnant soul body, the heaven-swallowing energy conversion technique was flawed. The path I walked was closer to the Buddhist faction, using the Vairocana mandala and the Vairocana as references, imitating the Vairocana to form the black and white dharma. To step out of the celestial realm, one needs to form the golden body and form the true image and nascent soul. At this step, one needs to choose the true foundation. Luckily, he cultivated the 3,000-star falling technique, which gave him hope. If not, who knows how long he would have to wait. Now, I have only merged 24 instant space dragon pellets, 24 Daos. Once the number of dragon pellets increases to 72 laws, I will gather the number of Earth Vengeance. Once I complete the illusionary and corporeal transformation, I can take another step and step into the celestial realm. Thinking about it, it wasn't far. He just needed 10 years to grasp the power in his body. He had 20 years to comprehend and polish the dragon pellet. In another 20 years, he would complete the illusionary and corporeal transformation. He needed around 5 years to peacefully use the Book of Ian. Luckily, he was in the outer region and met the instant space dragon hall. If he cultivated in the cloud world, who knows how long it would take for him to improve. Martial path cultivation also needs to be prepared. This time I took many spiritual fruits to strengthen the foundations. I could try to form a true golden pellet in my energy ocean. Hey, I really envy Shui Lingbo. That Taiyuan fairy had the golden pellet of a martial path saint. She carried it with her every day, and this step was much easier for her. It was said that recently she had many fortuitous encounters. Not long later, she would step into celestial realm. In the cloud world, she suppressed herself for a full 10 years. Once the restrictions were removed, she would be able to fly into the sky and step into the clouds. All the stars that were manifested were attracted. The 24 instant space dragon pellets all entered his sleeves. Zhongsho's body flashed, and he raised up the royal demon god shuttle once more. He headed towards the celestial world. Shirulin, Ruoshui, and the 6 space ships had probably been waiting nearby for several months. They couldn't delay any longer. When they fled, they didn't bother about anything else. The 4 of them worked together and didn't care about where they went. They sped 20 worlds away from Xuansong World and even further away from the celestial world. At this moment, if they wanted to find a way back, they would have to spend even more time. Zhongsho finally returned to Celestial 12 days later. Just as he was about to get close to the celestial world, a sense of danger rose up in his heart. The sky burning blood in his body suddenly boiled. Was it the Liu family? Chapter 825. The people from the Liu clan had really come quickly. The sky burning blood in his body slowly boiled. Zhongsho tried his best to hide and suppress it, but he was unable to stop it. The killing intent and evil intent in the distance, along with the resonance of the bloodline, became thicker and thicker. It was close to physical and stabbed into his heart. Outside of the void, a sharp and cold laugh pierced into his ears. What a coincidence! He's actually here. This is great. It saves us from having to search for him. Zhongsho frowned, only feeling his ears hurt. He knew that at this moment, he couldn't escape anymore. He stopped suppressing the sky-burning blood, unlocking the 7-cycle Xiantong full restrictions. Then, he saw a giant black net spread out in all directions and cover him. Zhongsho's eyes changed, his body flashed, turning into a light as he fled into the distance. In an instant, he tore open the heavy space barriers. They were tossing the black net far behind them. In the air, there were 7 more sparks that flashed. They were really quick. In the blink of an eye, they were right in front of him. Zhongsho looked at them and felt his heart jump. He didn't hesitate to fly backwards. Just as he was 3 breaths away, he saw the flame suddenly explode. Red flames spat out from within, sweeping all the stacked layers of space around. Not far away, a spirit space with weak spiritual energy was shattered and burnt to ashes under the bombardment of the crimson explosive flames. Sky-burning flame. Zhongsho's pupils constricted. He also had such an ability, but this was the first time he saw power evolve it to the top. This wasn't a power that a spirit realm or celestial realm cultivator could grasp. It should be a higher-level god realm cultivator who sealed their spiritual energy to craft the fire lightning. He avoided the strike of the sky-burning flame lightning. The black net behind him had already charged over. Zhongsho had an idea and wanted to fly away once more. However, black threads swept over from all directions. It completely blocked off all paths of escape. It also trapped him layer upon layer, enveloping him within. You're just a late soul realm cultivator. Why didn't you just surrender when you ran into us? You actually want to escape? Isn't that laughable? That sharp laughter rang out once again. It penetrated the black net and entered Zhongsho's ears. You must be joking. Even ants crave for life, let alone humans. Moreover, this is the periphery of the cloud world, and it is forbidden. It isn't a place for us to fight. How can someone from the cloud world be a match for both of us? Another steady and heavy voice sounded out, and it spoke disapprovingly. Also, from what I saw just now, he did have some ability. It's not something a spirit realm cultivator can do. If it wasn't for little sister Z, throwing out these balls of scarlet tribulation sky burning lightning, your heaven entangling net might not have been able to capture him. His escape technique is indeed extraordinary. This time, the voice came from a woman, and it was extremely cold. To be able to dodge my scarlet tribulation sky burning lightning technique in time, ordinary immortal realm experts are no match for him. Hey, if he doesn't have any ability, he won't be able to fight for the head of our Lu family. Why would Fangzhue push this person out to fight with a few young masters? The teen with the sharp voice laughed once more. This Fangzhue is really ambitious. He has only been in charge of the Tsangyan Hall for a few years, and actually dares to join the battle for the heir position. Who knows if he really wants to repay our cousin, or is he pushing him out to die? I heard that 2 months ago, Third Great Grandmaster was so angry that he tore apart several halls in the palace. There is such a thing. A fourth voice rang out, but it was calmer. However, what does this have to do with you? We just need to settle this matter and be able to return. Today, this person has been captured. Do we still need to head to the cloud world? After all, country ruler Xuanya told us to investigate what the Zhong family father and son did in the cloud world during these 10 years. In my eyes, it is best if we don't go. The calm middle-aged man opened his mouth once more. Taoist faction, Buddhist faction, and even that Song Shengdao Kenzo sect are all rising stars in this region. Especially that Taoist faction, when they were at their peak, they could be compared to our sky-burning Lu family. This place is also under the jurisdiction of the Tsangyan God Hall. Although Fangzhue has been moved away, there are still people in the God Hall that we can use. Anyways, Zhongsho himself is already waiting for us to do something. Capture him and bring him back to country ruler Xuanya, and we can explain everything. Zhongsho was within the black net, quietly listening to the few of them speak. The doubt in his eyes slowly faded. If one were to say that these people were only here to gather information, it would be barely acceptable. However, if they wanted to capture and kill him, the 4 of them weren't enough. Hearing the words of the 4 people outside, they already treated him as a prisoner, something in their hands. Zhongsho didn't care. carefully using his spiritual sense to sweep around. His brow furrowed. This heaven-entangling net was a little problematic. Who knows what it was made of, but the black threads couldn't be affected at all. When Zhongsho struck it with his sword, it was always a softball, unable to damage it at all. It was also really resilient, shrinking bit by bit and suppressing over. If he didn't have a way to break it, sooner or later he would be totally restrained. Problematic. At this moment, the instant space dragon pellet could change between real and illusionary. Dozens of stars were scattered outside, and he could teleport out at any moment. This heaven-entangling net couldn't trap him or wrap around him. If he could use the book of Ian Extreme Life, he could directly cross space and teleport out. As for the black and white Dharma, if it was slightly stronger, it would either swallow it or burn it. Now, he could only use the stupidest method to first analyze the structure of the formation and then use strength to break it. Just as he was fully focused, he felt that the heaven-entangling net was suddenly burning with flames. It was the same sky-burning flame, but it was no weaker than the red tribulation sky-burning lightning from before. Zhongsho scoffed coldly. The Juntian armor on his body reacted on its own. A layer of energy spread out around his body to block the red flames. However, he still summoned the blue fire Xian turtle to hold up the two giant shields. Then, the Xuanwu body protecting energy and layers of Xian eyes formed. It blocked the attacks of the sky-burning flame. Zhongsho himself was in between the giant shields, still fully focused on sensing the situation of the heaven-entangling net. It isn't that you can explain it, but that you will be heavily rewarded. The youth called Lu Kong was still laughing, his voice sharp and cold. Capture the main character. I want to see what other tricks that Sungyan Palace Lord has up his sleeves. That Xuanya country ruler has conquered dozens of worlds. Although he didn't expand much, he obtained many good things. Let's hope that is the case. Lu Zi said expressionlessly, I'm only curious about one thing. Since Fang Jue wants to push this person out, why does he have a reliable guard around him? If he thinks that we won't dare to attack in the land under Sangyan God Hall, he is too confident. I find it weird too. Maybe Fang Jue doesn't care about this person and is just a smokescreen to confuse us. That is hard to say. The people above will decide on this matter, and it has nothing to do with us. Or maybe the middle-aged man seemed to have thought about something really funny and burst out laughing. Or maybe he thinks that this Zhongsho has the ability to protect his life. However, no one laughed along with him. Zhongsho could only hear a few cold scoffs. It was obvious that they didn't think much of the middle-aged man's joke and didn't find anything funny about it. Then, the calm teen said, Lu Kong, what do you want? Since you have already captured him, then don't be a busybody. Lu Kong scoffed coldly when he heard that. His tone was extremely cold. It is because this fellow is a direct descendant of my Lu family that I am annoyed with him. There is nothing wrong with using fire to burn him. This person does have some ability. If he dies, then he is unlucky. If he doesn't, then he is lucky. Lumi, I know what I am doing, and it has nothing to do with you. The two of them seem to be talking about the sky-burning flame that was burning within the black net. How does it have nothing to do with us? The middle-aged man's voice turned cold. Lu Kong, I know about you. I know what happened to you, and I am not willing to persuade you. However, don't forget that this person is a direct descendant of our Lu family and is also one of the family head's children. If you treat him like this today, then you need to be wary of others treating you like this in the future. Not to mention that Cousin Hanyan's old subordinates are still here. Even if Fang Jue and Lung Li wanted to kill you, country ruler Xuanya might not go all out to protect you. This person's life is in the ancestral hall register. Then, even if he dies, we can't be stained with his blood. What you Lu Kong want to do has nothing to do with us, but please don't drag the three of us down. The auras of the few people outside seemed to be in a stalemate. A moment later, Lu Kong's voice opened once more. It was filled with unwillingness. Forget it. Let's just let him go today. If this fellow falls into the hands of country ruler Xuanya, his outcome won't be much better. A wave of spiritual energy rippled like it was about to retract the sky-burning flame within the net. However, moments later, Lu Kong's voice became weird. "Oh, interesting. He is actually able to hold on until now. I thought that in a few breaths, I would be able to refine him. However, until now, his aura is still perfectly stable and not damaged at all. This Zhongsho is really interesting." When he said this, he smiled. He seems to be relying on the Xian ice power to block. Natural protector beast? It is rare for the few of you to encounter such an interesting thing. Why don't we see how long he can live in my net? I'm guessing 20 breaths. I have overestimated him. What do you all think? Whilst he spoke, another wave of soul power was injected in, causing the red flame to burn even more intensely. The other 3 people outside the net were totally silent. A moment later, the calm middle-aged man's voice rang out once more. "Forget it. Let Lu Kong try. We can see the foundations of this Zhongsho and see how his martial path cultivation is. Legend has it that this person is a 7-tailed spiritual fox mixed with the blood of our Lu family sky-burning flame. Logically speaking, he shouldn't be able to cultivate." Lu Zi said expressionlessly. "Up to you." She didn't care about anything. Following which a cold scoff spread out from within the net. "Test my foundations? I am afraid that the 4 of you don't have the ability." A blood-red sword light suddenly pierced out. The 3,000 black threads were instantly broken. Chapter 826. Test my foundations? I am afraid the 4 of you don't have such ability. A blood-red sword light suddenly pierced out. The 3,000 black threads were instantly broken. Lu Kong was first shocked, and then he laughed coldly. What an interesting person. Even at such a time you still want to break out of the net. When the other middle-aged man saw that, he shook his head. This heaven-entangling net was made from silk produced by a special whale in the Black Ocean in the Lu family sky dome world. When it hunted in the ocean, it was weak and had the ability to recover. It was also crafted by a God Realm expert. The sword light was sharp, but in just a moment, the net would recover back to normal. However, in the next moment, the middle-aged man felt a chill down his spine. His heart was filled with fear, and his body turned ice cold. At the start, the blood-red sword light was condensed and didn't look any different from usual. However, where the sword light passed, it followed an extremely mysterious arc and pierced out. The man and the sword were one. All the black threads scattered and broke apart bit by bit. Like they had lost their life force, they all withered and withered. How were there any signs of healing? There was also a thread of killing intent that locked onto Lu Kong. The expressions of the 3 of them changed. The smile on Lu Kong's face froze on his face. He hurriedly tossed the net to the side and flashed in the air. He caused his body to deviate from where the blood-colored sword was pointing at. However, this killing intent, this extremely condensed sword intent wasn't so easy to dodge. The sword's shadow changed along with his body, like a startled swan piercing out of the black net and striking over. It got close inch by inch, forcing him into a corner inch by inch. The Comtine at the side was the closest. His eyes instinctively constricted as he scoffed coldly. A flame suddenly exploded out. Numerous fire-colored needles swiftly shot over. Remember Lu Kong? You owe me a favor today. They say that Cloud World cultivators can't be underestimated. When one fights, even if one is an ant, one can't be careless. His voice suddenly stopped. One could see a silver-white glow sliding out from Zhongsho's sleeves. He flew over at a speed that exceeded the limit of his reaction. The calm young man didn't even have time to react. That silver-throwing knife had already struck him between his eyebrows. At the same time, Zhongsho's cold sneer could be heard from afar. "Under my sword, is there any room for you to save anyone? It's better not to owe him this favor." The calm young man's eyes were filled with disbelief. How could this flying dagger be so fast? So strange? It was so strange that there was no way to defend against it. If he knew that this would happen, he wouldn't have acted for Lu Kong and caused trouble for himself. A final thought flashed through his soul remembrance. Following which, the sharp blade, energy, charged into his brain. His Naiwen, divine cloud, and even his entire soul was smashed into pieces. He was also unable to know about the matters of the world. The middle-aged man also attacked at the first instant. A flaming long saber chased after Zhong Shou from behind. Originally, he was only shocked by Zhong Shou's swordsmanship, but now he was even more shocked by the death of the calm young man. Lu Yu, a furious roar. Not only did the flaming saber not retreat, but it became even stronger. It brought with it heaven-covering flames as it instantly sped up. It was because of how strong Zhong Shou was and how deep his strength was that the three of them were able to block his strength. However, in the next instance, a ball of blue light charged out from the broken net. It was a giant turtle whose body was covered in blue flames, blocking the path of the saber attack behind Zhong Shou. That turtle looked back and blinked. Then, a huge shield smashed down mercilessly behind him. Quang! A loud ring, but the saber attack wasn't able to shatter the giant shield as the middle-aged man expected. Instead, he was blasted away by the boundless force. The saber attack was in a mess, and sparks flew. Xuanwu body protecting energy. The middle-aged man's expression changed drastically when he saw the giant tortoise in front of him. The giant turtle in front of him was actually a variant of a Xuanwu, a variant god beast. The power of the Xuanwu could be considered one of the top 3 god beasts. This giant turtle's strength was no weaker than others of the same species. Even if it was a realm lower than him, its strength was far superior. This Zhong Shou actually had such a god beast protecting him. The moment one man and one beast clashed, the outcome of the battle in front of the giant turtle was about to be decided. Zhong Shou merged with his sword, suddenly increasing his speed and avoiding those flame needles. At this moment, the woman beside Lu Zi attacked at the same time. Similar to before, her hands formed a spell. A few sparks shot out, containing the blazing sun lightning explosion. Using a special method, it was as fast as lightning. Learning from Lu Yu's mistake, she had already raised a brocade handkerchief to protect herself. Zhong Shou smiled, the sword light twisting and turning as it deviated slightly. A blood-colored sword light flashed in the air and slashed towards Lu Zi. The sword light flashed, and with extreme speed that caught one off guard, it sliced off Lu Zi's jade-like hands before those few sparks shot out. He also felt a little wary of this technique, known as the red tribulation sky burning lightning. Only by using the Book of Ian would he be able to dodge and block it. If not, how would he have fallen into that black net? After suffering once, he definitely wouldn't make the same mistake a second time. He would fall to the same technique. Lu Zi was obviously shocked. A trace of pain and surprise flashed across her frosty face. She didn't hesitate to fly backward. Zhong Shou temporarily didn't have the mood to bother about this woman. The sword light in his hand was deflected once more. The nameless sword also locked onto Lu Kong, who was swiftly fleeing. This person's words were really infuriating, which was why he wanted to kill him first. A red light flashed, but this time no one could block it. In just a 300th of an instant, the two of them and one sword passed through dozens of stacked layers and space walls. Lu Kong finally had nowhere to hide and was unable to dodge. In the end, the red sword shadow was right in front of him. He slashed out with the knife in his hand, but the moment it came into contact, it instantly broke. The energy around his body was sliced apart like it was breaking through dry leaves. Lu Kong's eyes were filled with a crazed expression. How is that possible? Just a late spirit realm. How could he kill him? He was the head of the 4 of them here. The Lu family branch bloodline was one of the few rising stars in 200 years. In just 10 years, he could enter late celestial realm, someone who was half a foot in a god realm. How is it possible for him to fall here? To die in the hands of this Lu family bastard? The blood-colored sword didn't show any mercy at all. With a slash, it sliced Lu Kong's head into 2. His head was sent flying, but his eyes were still wide open, filled with disbelief. He suddenly thought about something. His pupils constricted into a needle shape. Sword intent spirit realm. Your killing path sword intent has actually reached the spirit realm. Before he finished, the blood-colored sword light stirred once more. 1,000 sword shadows shattered the soul of the head. The middle-aged man in the distance was originally hesitating about whether or not to continue fighting. At this moment, when he heard those words, he didn't hesitate at all and flew backwards. Sword Intense Spirit Realm. It was actually Sword Intense Spirit Realm. No wonder this Zhongsho's sword made him feel so terrified. How could a late Spirit Realm grasp Spirit Realm Sword Intent? Liu Kang's strength was above his, so he definitely wouldn't be wrong. It was just unbelievable, Shuanya country ruler sending him to investigate the situation in the Cloud World was a good decision. What was amusing was that the Liu family still thought that this kid was just a bastard, a smokescreen pushed out by Fang Jue. Also, what was going on with those people in charge of monitoring the Zhong father and son? They actually kept saying that this Zhongsho was normal and couldn't cultivate, that he was a piece of trash. If this Zhongsho was a piece of trash, then what was he, Liu Hui, worth? At this moment, Liu Hui felt really weird. In his initial impression, this Zhongsho was just a rabbit with some strength. No matter how strong he was just a rabbit. He couldn't pose a threat and couldn't escape from their grasp. However, in just a few breaths, this rabbit turned into a man-eating beast. After the blood-colored sword light killed Liu Kang, it turned around. The sword intent locked onto him. This time, it was Lu Zi who Zhongsho felt the greatest threat. She and the sword were one, instantly changing. Lu Zi's hands had already recovered. A few sparks appeared in her hands once more. However, this time she didn't dare to use it on Zhongsho. She tossed aside everything, exploding all the red tribulation sky, burning lightning in front of her as she continued to flee into the distance. She couldn't maintain that ice-cold expression anymore, her face turning ashen white. Sword Path Spirit Realm. With her current realm, once she was locked, she would definitely die. She could only go all out to fight for that chance of survival. When Fang Hui saw this, his face was filled with terror. With a blue fire Xian turtle in front of him, he didn't dare to block and couldn't block it. He could only holler, "Zhongsho, you dare? The few of us are your uncles. What are the consequences of killing the elders of the same race? Do you know who the person behind Zier is? If you dare to kill her today, you will regret it for the rest of your life." Zhongsho scoffed coldly once more. Same race? In the conversation just now, she didn't treat Zhongsho as someone of the same race. As for the person behind Lu Zi, he was too lazy to bother about him. He also couldn't think of why he would regret it for the rest of his life. Even if someone wanted to take revenge for her, as long as he had the nameless sword, what did he have to fear? He stopped before the flame, lightning, vengeful spirit exploded. Then, just as its strength was slightly reduced, the sword attack exploded out once more as he slashed out. It actually forcefully slashed apart the sky-burning flame and pierced through that layer of cloth. Its body was like a dream as it headed right for Lu Zi. Just as it touched her brow, Zhongsho's expression changed. He felt a beast-like roar ring out in his ear. The bloodline in his body was boiling. In an instant, everything was clear. Lu Zi's body had a talisman that could sense danger. Moreover, this person's cultivation was not only strong, their bloodline was also really close. As expected, he had one more huge enemy. Zhongsho's eyes flashed. His sword didn't stop at all as it stabbed into Lu Zi's brow, causing her to lose all signs of life. After killing Lu Zi, he slashed. In just half a breath, Lu Hui's head was tossed into the air. Chapter 827. At the same time, who knows how many worlds away from the celestial world, in a fiery hell-like space, an extremely sorrowful and angry howl suddenly resounded through the three heavens. That voice shook and even spread out of this world. Lu Zi, like a beast in despair, it caused the close to 1,000,000 soldiers who were fighting here to stop in their tracks. They looked back in shock. In his line of sight was a young man sitting on a crimson war chariot. He was handsome and masculine, holding a giant sword in his hand as he sat in the middle of the army. He was the head of the army. His eyes were red, filled with blood veins like blood was about to drip out. Who dares to do that? Who dares to scatter Zer's soul? His spiritual sense spread out, striking out in all directions like he wanted to spread further away, exploding out without any care for the consequences. However, it caused the numerous soldiers here to find it tough to take. They all half knelt on the ground and gritted their teeth. Even the enemies with stone-skin flames on their bodies were looking over in shock. They didn't understand why the man who led the army and caused heavy losses to their race would suddenly go crazy. However, they were terrified of his strength and didn't dare to attack. Celestial World, Sangyan Hall. It's Fangjue. He really deserves to die. He seemed to have recognized where Lu Zi fell. The teen's face was even more vicious as he instinctively started to vent his anger. Remember, no matter who you are or what your identity is in the Lu family, I, Lu Wushuang, will definitely kill you under my sword. I will make you suffer for the rest of your life. I will wipe out your race and let you taste this heart-tearing pain. After saying this, the figure suddenly rose into the air. With a step, he left this fiery world. However, just as his figure was about to flee into the distance, an incomparably vast power suddenly crossed the boundary and arrived. It locked down his body. A cold and dignified voice suddenly sounded. Lu Wushuang, the battle here hasn't ended. Where are you going? Are you going to leave your post? Zer has already died. Lu Wushuang did not struggle and allowed the power to suppress his body. He only glared at the void. I remember you once said that you would definitely take good care of her. Lu Zi? Was it the descendant of the 14th branch? I remember that not long ago, I sent her to investigate the cloud world. He really shouldn't. That Fangjue doesn't have guts. The dignified voice was filled with doubt, but then it turned serious again. Is it worth it for a girl from a side branch of the Lu clan? Ignore the war in the Bloodflame world. So what? Z is worth this much from me. Lu Wushuang snorted coldly and said, in my eyes, even the entire Lu family is not as important as her. You brat. You're really incurable. That dignified voice seemed to be extremely angry. After that, there was a period of silence as if he was pondering. After a while, he spoke again. I will send people to investigate this matter carefully. You must take revenge with your own hands. We will not stop you. But before that, they had to end the war in the Bloodflame world, and the casualties couldn't exceed 100,000. If not, with me stopping you, you can forget about leaving this place for the rest of your life. When his voice fell, the huge, strange force also dissipated at the same time. Lu Wushuang stood in the air. His face alternated between green and white. In the end, he stomped his feet, filled with unwillingness as he entered the Bloodflame world once more. This time, his killing intent was extremely sharp as he suppressed the million Lu family soldiers once more. Even if he was tens of thousands of worlds away, Zhongshu also felt a chill down his spine. The evil killing intent that seeped out from his bloodline didn't dissipate, causing his hair to stand on end. His heart surged. That sense of danger was getting closer and closer. This person is so strong, at least stronger than him now. It made one's heart tremble. He only had the same feeling once before when he challenged the Taoist faction alone. He didn't care about success or failure. He only felt it when his life and death were uncertain. At that time, he faced thousands of Taoist faction sects as well as numerous spirit realm cultivators in the vast habitat. However, at this moment, just one person gave him such a sense of danger. As expected, I still have to raise my combat strength first. I need to perfect the 3,000-star falling technique. It would be best if I could merge 48 instant space dragon pellets within a few months to transform from illusionary to real and one with my soul. Zhongshu thought about it as he casually reached out and grabbed all the items that the four of them carried with them, especially the heaven entangling net and the red tribulation sky burning lightning. Zhongshu played with them. The more he looked at them, the more magical he found them. This net is really weird. Who knows what material it is made of? It is tough to be hurt by knives and swords. It can't be affected by strength, and it also has the ability to heal itself. It should be a magical treasure crafted by a God Realm blacksmith between grade 7 and grade 8. Power is also far above people of the same grade. Besides that, this crimson tribulation sky-blaze lightning was obviously refined with the blood essence of a god as its core, and its might was practically equivalent to 30% of the strength of a god. This Lu family isn't just rich and overbearing. Before this, when he saw Fang Jue and the others, he noticed the artifacts and combat strength of this group of people were all really extraordinary. Actually, not only the heaven entangling net and the red tribulation sky burning lightning, but even those red flame, flying needles, and flame blades weren't ordinary treasures. Power was really good. They were all intermediate celestial realm, but the celestial realm experts that Yelu Hongji gathered weren't his match. However, these 4 people made him spend so much effort, and he pretty much used all his trump cards. He even needed the help of the blue fire Xian turtle to be able to take them down. Unfortunately, this net is too badly damaged. Without the corresponding materials, it is most probably unable to be repaired. As for this red tribulation sky burning lightning, without a special method to activate it, it is just trash. If I face that God Realm cultivator himself, it is like a ticking time bomb. It is best if I don't use it. He thought about it. It seems like he had to be careful in the future. Not only were there many weird people in the outer region, but there were also many weird methods that were tough to defend against. Just like today, he nearly fell into a dead end. Thinking about himself, if he didn't have the book of Ian Extreme Life, if the 4 of them fell into the net, they would go all out and try to kill him. Even if he had half of the Juntian armor and the blue fire Xian turtle protecting him, he would still be severely injured. He would still be heavily injured. Thinking about what happened today, he felt a chill run down his spine. What would he do if he were to face someone even stronger? It seems like in the future, not only did he have to be really careful, but he also had to have more methods to defend himself. Thinking about it, he could only rely on this sword technique and this flying knife. As for spells, they weren't enough. The abilities that he could use were just too few. The 4 members of the Lu clan had a lot of belongings and spirit stones with them. Although it was far from the Qin Emperor's subtomb and the treasury in the First Dragon Hall, it was still a lot. Their gains were huge. Zhongshu didn't care much about these low and middle Xian grade mind stones. However, he still needed some mind stones to set up formations or use for other purposes. Moreover, not long later, he would have to spend a huge sum. These gains were the only thing that he was happy about. He used the power of the Book of Ian to wipe out all traces of this place. Zhongshu continued his journey. As expected, they are already here. Moreover, it has been a long time. During these few months, the 2 girls must have been really worried. His spiritual sense could clearly sense the spaceship fleet that was parked not far away from Tianfeng World. They were hiding in a really secluded place and were really careful. This was because Tsang Shengdao had a special technique that Zhongshu could sense. However, at this moment, Zhongshu didn't head over to meet up with the fleet right away. Instead, he hurriedly entered the Heaven Settlement world and charged towards the Wunshi Pavilion with great familiarity. After leaving for several months, this newly opened artifact pavilion still hadn't opened up. As for Landlord Chun, he was as leisurely as before. He was drinking tea alone in the hall of the pavilion. Looking at Zhongshu's arrival, he instinctively frowned, and then his eyes turned serious. What thick, vengeful energy. Not long ago, you killed someone? Zhongshu smiled when he heard that. That was indeed the case. For people at once. Moreover, you got into huge trouble. The person who placed this restriction on your body was at least peak celestial realm. If your bloodline is connected, it won't be easy to remove it. Hearing those words, Zhongshu was slightly shocked. He raised his eyes and looked opposite him in shock. He could see through that. That was indeed the case. When he killed Lu Zi, a strange power that was close to a secret curse had invaded his body. This curse could protect Lu Zi's body. If Lu Zi died, it could also be used to chase after the culprit. If it was a normal curse, Zhongshu could solve it himself. He wasn't good at spells, but his understanding of the Tao was no weaker than any celestial realm cultivator. With some slight research, he would be able to find a way. However, the problem was that the two of them were connected by bloodline and were deeply entangled with one another. It was tough to solve. Does Landlord Chun have a way to solve it? He originally came for that. However, the person opposite him was able to see through his predicament right away. Or maybe he had the ability to solve his problem. The Lu family, Xin Yang, soul-locking curse. Unless you don't have the Lu family sky burning blood in your body, you can forget about solving it. As he said that, the middle-aged man looked over with a weird expression. I didn't expect that apart from the cloud world, you also have a Lu family background. Your bloodline is really pure. You should be one of the Lu family young masters, right? Zhongsho was instantly disappointed. Then he smiled bitterly. This landlord Chin's eyes were really sharp. As for the title of Lu family young master, he didn't agree and wasn't willing to admit it. However, in the eyes of others, that was how they saw him. That landlord Chen didn't want to dig deeper. In the recent few thousand years, the Lu family had many internal conflicts. Even the current family head was unable to suppress them. A direct bloodline descendant of the Lu family had fallen to such a state to Tianfeng World, a place that was publicly known as far away. One could see his predicament. There was no need to dig deeper into the reason within. After taking in a deep breath, he opened his mouth. Although I can't solve this curse, I have a talisman that can help you solve this problem. After he said that, as expected, a golden talisman was tossed over. To be continued. Chapter 828. Although I can't solve this curse, I have a talisman that can help you solve this problem. After he said that, Landlord Chun tossed a golden talisman over. Zhongsho took the talisman and his eyes lit up. When this item entered his hand, he didn't even need to activate it, and the weird power within his bloodline was suppressed. However, he could still feel that the spiritual energy within the talisman was slowly being used up. He couldn't see what kind of talisman it was. He could only deduce its background from the spiritual patterns within. It should have come from the cloud, desolate era, ancient style. He couldn't help but look towards the middle-aged man, surnamed Chun, in anticipation. This talisman should be able to help you suppress this curse for 3 months. After that, you can only pray for your own good fortune. Thank you for 10 high-grade mind stones. Zhongsho didn't have any objections to the price, his eyes shining brightly. Landlord Chen shook his head and laughed. I obtained this talisman by chance, and it was passed down from ancient times. I don't know how to craft it and only have one. If you want more, I'm afraid you're going to be disappointed. Zhongsho's face fell, following which he didn't care anymore. He actually didn't think about escaping from this chase. To be able to delay this person's revenge by a few months was already enough for him. He ran over here for another matter. Let's forget about this matter. Zhongsho came today for another matter. Can Landlord design a sword formation for me? Sword formation? Landlord Chin's brows rose up in shock. I do have a few sets of sword formations here. I'm confident that power is not bad. Halfway through his words, he came back to his senses. Does esteemed guest want to craft your own sword to merge with the soul artifact? This business can be done. What request do you have? The moment these words were said, Zhongsho was in a tough spot. There were too many requests, and it involved too much, so it wasn't easy for him to elaborate. After hesitating slightly, he asked, does Landlord know about the sex cycle of Heaven Star falling technique? How would I not know about the Taoist technique? Landlord Chun smiled, the weird look in his eyes getting thicker. What does this have to do with the sword formation that you want to craft? I also have a divine ability called the 3000 Starfall, also known as the Instant Starfall technique. In the Taoism Cosmic Cycle Secret Star Falling Art, every single star was an amalgamation of spells. At his peak, 100,000 stars fell. He was invincible, and holy venerables avoided him. Each and every one of those stars is a great Tao. As Zhongsho spoke, he saw the pupils of the middle-aged man in front of him shrink. Zhongsho smiled and said, naturally, this technique is still in its infancy. I need a sword formation that is compatible with this divine ability. I also need materials related to the laws of time and space to practice the sword. I need a total of 10,800 swords. There are at least 10 immortal grade swords. There were a total of 10 Saint Stage true dragon fangs in his storage. It was more than enough to refine an immortal sword. Naturally, it wasn't possible for power to reach the level of the god-refined sword. It was already not bad if he had even 100th of it. Based on what Wei Su said, those 7 swords were all quasi-god artifacts. The god-refined sword was a little different. It was said that it had the chance to improve itself and become a god artifact. Thinking about it, Zhong Shou took out his nameless sword. It is best if I can use this sword as the core to build a sword formation. Landlord Chun didn't take it. Instead, he said helplessly, 10,800 swords, 10 celestial swords. Esteemed guest, you really think too highly of me. How could a sword formation of this scale possibly be deduced by me? Unless I am a Saint Realm expert who has studied formations for many years, there might be a chance. When Zhong Shou heard this, he didn't have a weird expression on his face and didn't feel that it was a pity. He had only come here to give it a try. Thinking about it, asking Landlord Chun to deduce this formation on his behalf was indeed a little too much. Since that was the case, he could only wait for Longing to come out of seclusion and let his master, who was only good at the sword path, help out once. However, I am extremely impressed that our esteemed guest has such great ambitions. 3,000 stars, 10,800 swords, how domineering. I am also more and more curious about your background. I am Shun Yuexian. Esteemed guest can call me by my name in the future. Shun Yuexian furrowed his brows and sank into deep thought. A moment later, he said, Esteemed guest, please wait a moment. He returned to the inner room and took out an item. Forgive me for being unable to craft such a huge sword formation. Forcefully deducing it will use up a lot of energy. Although I have a lot of time left, I can't waste it on this. The moment he said this, Zhong Shou's face turned red. He wasn't willing to use up what little lifespan he had, which was why he chose to hire someone else to do it. Only to hear Shun Yuexian smile. What a coincidence. 1,000 years ago, I obtained the blueprint of an ancient sword formation by chance. It was passed down by artifact cultivators in the ancient era of this region 40,000 years ago. I heard that it was really amazing and was known as the 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Destruction Sword Formation. It might be suitable for esteemed guest. Ancient artifact cultivator? Zhong Shou's brow rose up. He had heard of this term before. When artifact cultivators were rampant, the cloud world hadn't even appeared. They walked the path of man and artifact merging into one. Their combat strength was usually really strong. The sword cultivators and Kinzo sect of the cloud world, even Long Ying, all obtained some of their legacies. However, this method was a little biased toward the outer path. Saint Realm was attainable, but it was tough to form the Tao. As time went on, it slowly declined. However, 40,000 years ago, those artifact cultivators had unparalleled strength. Even until now, it was still something people talked about. What was this 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation like? Picking up the blueprint, Zhong Shou was shocked. Who knows what this paper was made of? The material was actually just a little weaker than the Book of Ian Extreme Life. It was just a thin piece of paper, but it was so heavy that he nearly couldn't take it. It wasn't that he wasn't strong enough, but that the Tao contained within the blueprint exceeded the limits of his soul. Holding it in his hand, his soul ocean shook and his soul power surged. Taking a closer look, he immediately felt threads of incomparably sharp sword energy charging into his soul. It was like it really existed. The aura was terrifying and extremely sharp. Zhong Shou's forehead was instantly covered in cold sweat. However, he felt more and more that this 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation wasn't ordinary. When I first came into contact with it, I was like you. However, it was even more dangerous and my soul nearly shattered. Legend had it that the person who cultivated this sword formation wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against several end-realm experts during the ancient era. He stood on the same level as Saint Venerables. Unfortunately, no matter how strong he was, he couldn't form the Tao and turned into a pile of bones. Shen Yuexian seemed to have seen through Zhong Shou's situation and took the diagram back, causing Zhong Shou to relax. This formation is similar to your 3,000-star falling technique. It doesn't have any special requirements for the material. Naturally, the sword's quality restrictions will also affect the sword power ability of the formation. It also doesn't limit the number. At least 10 will do, and at most 10,000 will do. I wanted to craft this myself, but unfortunately, it isn't 40,000 years ago, and there aren't so many treasures to be found. I'm also alone, and can't compare to those famous sects and races. In the end, I could only give up. Is this formation to your liking? Zhong Shou blinked, his clear eyes shining like stars. His face was filled with a pleading expression. This set of sword formation was simply too suitable for him. Although he felt a little dizzy looking at it, it would be good for him to look at it in the future. However, he felt really nervous. If he wanted to obtain this item, he would have to pay a huge price and pay a huge price. Shen Yuexian looked at his expression and knew that he had asked for nothing. He shook his head and laughed, taking out dozens of diagrams and passing them to Zhong Shou. Before I gave up, I had spent a lot of time studying this sword formation. As this formation was too complicated, after all, it wasn't an artifact cultivator lineage. Thus, I tried to simplify it so that I could learn it. However, when I deduced it, I realized that I was still unable to complete it. If you are interested, you can start from this simplified formation. In the future, if you have the ability, you can complete the true 10 Extreme Imperial Tao. When he said this, he suddenly paused. Shen Yuexian's expression suddenly turned solemn and serious. However, I won't take money for this formation, and I'm not willing to exchange items. If you want to take it, you have to make a promise. When you have the ability, you have to help me do something. Zhong Shou was stunned and looked over with a weird expression. He wasn't surprised at all when he learned that it was free. With this person's ability, if he couldn't do it, then it wouldn't be a normal problem. Compared to this promise, he was more willing to use those celestial stones to solve it. However, speaking of which, with this person's ability to be an artifact master in such a remote place, he definitely had his own story. In the end, when he left Tianfeng World, Zhong Shou still agreed. The temptation of this sword formation was something that he couldn't reject. He knew that it was a huge problem and most probably had a lot of dangers. However, he still swore to accept it, only because he knew that he had missed out on this day. He didn't know when he would be able to find a sword formation that was so suitable for him and was also so vast with power. However, before he left, Shen Yuexian's words made him alert. Although this sword formation is huge with power, it also consumes a lot of mental energy. In the past, when I was young, I wasted at least 300 years for this formation. Till now, I still regret it. One must know that this sword artifact is an external item, and one can't be too obsessed with its power. One also can't immerse oneself in it too deeply. Cultivators like us cultivate for tens of thousands of years. In the end, don't we still want to reach the peak of the Tao and live forever? This is the true right path. Thinking about that senior from 40,000 years ago, how sad and pitiful. These words were all sincere and heartfelt. Zhong Shou was also deeply moved. The right path? How would I, Zhong Shou, not know that? Outside Tianfeng World, Zhong Shou shook his head and smiled. At this time, the Taoist faction was still eyeing him aggressively and definitely wouldn't give up so easily. Before this big problem could be completely solved, the pressure from the Liu family came one after another. Killing that Liu Zi also made an enemy who had the same bloodline as him. If he didn't prepare some abilities to defend himself, how could he be at ease? However, if he wasn't prepared to go from complicated to simple, he really wouldn't dare to take over this 10 extreme Imperial Tao Destruction sword formation. Chapter 830. riding the Royal Demon Shuttle. It only took an hour to travel from Tianfeng World to where the fleet was hiding. The moment Zhong got close, he could sense the surging spiritual energy in that direction. His brows instinctively rose up, shock flashing in his eyes. It seems like they're fighting and the opponent isn't weak. Looking at the rise and fall of the spiritual wave, the side of the battle was at least celestial realm. He couldn't help but frown. The strongest combat strength of the fleet was only Ruoshui and Shirulin. Before he left, the former had used the help of the Jade Xian clear purple pill and showed signs of breaking through to spirit realm. 20% of spirit and martial arts merger was enough to sweep people of the same grade. The 300,000 soldiers in the fleet were all elites chosen from the 10 fighting Gans. However, the problem was that Ruoshui wasn't good at army path-killing techniques and couldn't command the strength of 10,000 troops. As for Shirulin, she was still young after all. He didn't dare to imagine the tragic state of the fleet over there. Zhong Shaoxin panicked, not caring about his spiritual energy as he increased his speed. He also found it weird that the place he chose was really secluded. He read Song Shengdao's book collection and coincidentally learned about it. It was the best place to hide troops and shouldn't have celestial realm beasts passing through. What kind of unforeseen event happened? In a few breaths, they flew over, following which Zhong looked forward in shock. The place of the intense battle wasn't where the people of the fleet were. Instead, it was nearby in a world river. The 6 spaceships were engaged in a fierce battle with a giant beast whose body and tail were thousands of meters long. It was like a golden flame lion, its body covered in purple gold scales. Not only was its body huge, but it was also light and nimble. It galloped in the void, roaring out furiously and shaking the void. However, although this beast looked majestic, its eyes showed signs of exhaustion. Those 6 spaceships weren't any weaker than it. They surrounded it and attacked together. When the flame lion advanced, the spaceships would retreat. When the flame lion retreated, the spaceships would entangle with it, maintaining a sufficient distance. This caused him to be completely unable to free himself, causing him to exhaust bit by bit. Occasionally, they would shoot out energy-destroying crossbows with the buffs of the spirit masters on the ship. Although they couldn't heavily injure the celestial-grade golden-scale fire lion, they could at least make it worry a little. They covered the sky and covered the earth. Their numbers were enormous, and they attacked with extreme speed, making it impossible for him to dodge. Those tens of grade 9 giant crossbows were buffed by the formation. It was even able to forcefully pierce through those thick golden scales. There also seemed to be spirit realm experts on each of the 6 ships to against the flame lion's divine ability and magic power. Zhong was stunned for a moment. Then he stood aside and watched quietly. In just a short moment, the golden scale flame lion's body was covered with countless wounds. As he flew through the void, he was no longer as agile as before. Zhong looked into the distance and noticed that the 6 ships were advancing and retreating in an orderly manner. He had predicted almost every move and every possibility of the fire lion. Even though the golden-scaled flame lion was weak, he didn't dare to be careless. He carefully chased to slowly wear down its strength. 6 spaceships being controlled like an arm, not bad. Is it Rulin? No wonder this little brat was able to win against the night demons and the great Navy. Is this the skill of an unparalleled, famous general? As expected from her name, if there wasn't Zhong Shirulin would have helped her brother out, using a few broken ships to attack all around to steal grain for the winter. However, she was invincible and couldn't be stopped. Under the cloud ocean, she had established the foundations of an emperor dynasty. Today, she was leading these 6 spaceships to try to kill this celestial realm beast. However, these energy-destroying crossbows are pretty much a bottomless pit, using up huge amounts of resources. Who knows where she got so many grade 9 beast crystals from these few days? Naturally, if they could kill this flame lion giant beast, then everything could be earned back. On the body of this celestial realm beast, even if it was just a scale, its value was far from what a grade 9 beast could compare to. Just as his thoughts were running wild, a giant ship appeared. Who knows if it was too anxious, but it got a little closer. A bright glow flashed in the eyes of that giant lion. Energy exploded out from its body as it sped up and pounced towards the ship. Before his body even arrived, the scarlet flames had already swept over. That sharp beast claw also smashed through the air and slashed over. Zhongsho frowned slightly, raising the nameless sword by his side, and was prepared to attack. In his heart, he didn't understand why Rulin would make such a mistake. In the next instance, he saw that on the ship. Hundreds of spiritual talismans were shot out, blocking the flame power and also helping to push forward. It caused the speed of the giant ship to increase by 3 times. It avoided the giant claw that ripped through the air by a millimeter. Hundreds and thousands of energy-extinguishing crossbows blasted over in unison from all directions. That flame lion was caught off guard and couldn't dodge at all. After it cried out, numerous bloody holes appeared all over its body. So it was a trap to beat them at their own game? Interesting. Samuraim's eyes flashed, and he smiled as he kept the nameless sword and continued to look on. However, what happened next was really calm and peaceful, so calm that it was a little boring. However, due to this calmness, Zhongsho could feel that it wasn't normal. It was like each step of the 6 spaceships was carefully calculated. He eliminated all the possibilities of accidents. They went step by step, not rushing at all. The process was really smooth, and there was no fire or smoke at all. 6 ships and 1 beast fought intensely for half a day. In the end, they confirmed that the fire lion was indeed exhausted. Only then did they toss out a large net to lock up the giant beast. Then, hundreds of talismans similar to the energy-destroying spirit upheaval talisman were shot out. This was to prevent the flame Qilin giant beast from exploding its beast pellet in despair. Another 4 hours passed until the giant beast stopped making a sound. Zhongsho's body turned into a streak of light and charged into one of the giant ships. This ship was his flagship and was also called Gantia Mountain. It was made from the giant piece of wood he got from Prince Jia Mingluo's hands. It was used as the dragon bone and was crafted by Kongqi's sect. Not only was it the strongest out of the 6 spaceships, but its outer shell was also the sturdiest. After entering the ship, only when his body reached the small palace that was specially built for him did people notice. Then, joy appeared on the faces of all the guards. As expected, Rulin was here, sitting beside his throne, giving out orders to control the 6 spaceships. At this moment, within the Gantian ship, there were cheers all around. Not only did they not lose a single person from this hunt, but they also gained a lot. A celestial grade golden scale fire lion. Just 1 pellet was enough to cover their losses. Moreover, it was more than enough. Not to mention the other parts of the fire lion, which were all rare treasures. The tens of thousands of scales on its body. If they were used sparingly, they could craft thousands of grade 9 magical treasures. At the start, Rulin was focused on observing the outside of the ship. Ruoshui was holding her chin with her hand. Her eyes were lazy as she looked on with interest at what Rulin was doing. A moment later, they finally felt that the atmosphere wasn't right and raised their heads. However, they noticed that Zhongsho was already in front of them. Brother Shou, Senior Master. Rulin was first delighted, and then she seemed to have thought about something, grumbling. Senior Master, you should have arrived long ago, right? Why did you stay outside to watch the show? Zhongsho's face turned bitter. It wasn't good to have a high seniority. He was being called old for no reason. Thus, he patted Rulin's head. There are no outsiders here. You're my sister, so just call me brother or royal brother. You must know that our Song Xingdao doesn't care much about seniority. We just need to respect the old and love the young. If Zhao Yanran were here, she would definitely break out in curses and expose Zhongsho's hypocrisy. Who was it that forced him to call him great 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 great. Not even one word less? Rulin, on the other hand, was extremely happy. She enjoyed Zhong Shou's intimate caresses. It squinted its eyes and let out a satisfied murmur, which sounded like a cat meowing. Zhong Shou, on the other hand, suddenly felt a burst of fear and trepidation. Why did he feel as if his body was on fire? His body was on fire, and his bestial desires were blazing. Could it be that he was really a beast? At this moment, Rulin had grown a little taller. As expected from the snow line of the palm, she was not much different from a 12-year-old girl. Ruoshui didn't say anything, only using her pure and clear eyes to look at Zhong Shou. She seemed to be asking Zhong Shou how he had been in the past few months. Did he face any danger? It wasn't until Zhong Shou's body stiffened up that a weird expression appeared in her eyes, filled with disdain. The current her wasn't like a few years ago when she didn't dare to be interested in male and female matters and was ignorant. Zhong Shou only felt his face burning up, awkwardly retracting his hand. Then he coughed dryly and used his ability to shift the focus. Speaking of which, it is weird. I don't remember our Gantian mountain having so many beast crystals stored up. What is going on with this golden scale fire lion? Changing the topic to shift the attention of the people around. Zhong Shou was familiar with this technique and had tried it many times. What he asked was something he was curious about. A portion of these beast crystals came from our Kinzo sect, Buddhist faction, and common people's faction. A portion came from Miss Rulin, who led the fleet and hunted beasts. At the start, Miss Rulin said that it was better to be prepared. Today it really came into use. The voice was really calm and heavy, but also filled with sharpness. Zhong Shou turned around in shock, following which his eyes were filled with a weird expression. The person in front of him was the one who was once on the same level as him. Even Tai Chi, whose aura nearly suppressed the other 5 of the 6 pinnacle swords. He remembered that when he first met him, he felt that this person looked reserved, but was actually really arrogant. He was humble and polite, but was really arrogant. Looking at this person now, it was like he was a totally different person. Calm and humble, gentle like jade, giving one a good impression of him. Speaking of which, this time, when he was conquering the outer region, the Kinzo sect and Buddhist faction did indeed participate, amongst which the former was the most important. So this time the leader of the Kinzo sect was this Tai Chi. Zhong Shaoxin was filled with admiration for the 10,000 sword vast habitat mountain headlinchen's teaching methods. On the other hand, he was curious why the Kinzo sect would send this person out. Chapter 831. Zhong Shou had guessed that the person following the Kinzo sect was Su Chun. He also thought about whether or not he would summon Lei Dong back from the outer region. Or maybe it would be the other Kinzo sect elders. However, he didn't expect that it would be this Tai Chi, my sword sect attache's great importance to the expansion of the outer territory this time. Senior brother Ruotao has already been confirmed by my Kinzo sect as the next outer sword vast habitat mountain head, so it isn't convenient for him to come over. This time, I can only let my junior brother do it for me. Tai Chi knew that Zhong Shou would have such doubts, as he said expressionlessly. The 2 things that he mentioned were that the Kinzo sect placed a lot of importance on. Tai Chi's position in the Kinzo sect was still really high, and he still expressed that he placed a lot of importance on this matter. However, he didn't have any other emotions and just calmly explained. As for this golden scale fire lion, we bumped into it 2 months ago. We went through so much to escape to this place. However, this golden scale fire lion chased us relentlessly and wanted to break through our hiding place. Thus, a day ago, Rulin set up a trap. First, we heavily injured this beast, and then, after half a day, we killed it here. When Zhongsho heard this, he instantly felt guilty. 2 months ago should have been when he was hiding from the instant space dragon race in Shuang Ocean. Luckily, nothing happened, otherwise he would have regretted it for the rest of his life. He also felt that he couldn't split his attention. With his strength alone, it was getting harder and harder to take care of everything. Luckily, Rulin survived. He caressed Rulin's head. This little brat didn't have any intention of using these achievements to show off in front of Zhongsho. However, she really liked Zhongsho's intimate actions. Outside of the hall, a gentle old voice spread out. Indeed, Miss Rulin can command the warships like her own arms. Be it planning before the battle or commanding before the battle, it all makes one exclaim and is really exquisite. I have never seen such a talent in my life. Ruler has a good eye for people. This trip to the outer region has given me a lot of confidence. Zhongsho looked over, only to see that the person who came was 10,000 Buddha, vast habitat Sifong. He couldn't help but think to himself that Li Fengfei and the other two were probably going to miss out on one place. Looking away, as expected, Zhongsho saw Jingyin from afar. Naturally, Zhao Yanran and Xin Yunlan follow behind. These two people were people that the common people path had chosen to travel with them. This was why Zhongsho wasn't surprised. In the next instance, Zifong spoke with a complicated expression. A few days ago, I received news from the cloud world. Jun Shang, you've really brought back something amazing this time. You've really put me in a difficult spot. I am afraid that once I get on Ruler's boat, it will be tough for me to get off. When Zhongsho heard this, he instantly knew that Li Fengfei and the other two had returned to the cloud world. That Shuang Ocean was originally really close to the cloud world. He had spent some time on the journey, and he had received guidance from Shan Yuexian in the Tianfeng world. He had also spent some time to grasp the basics of the sword formation. His whereabouts were uncertain, and he wasn't able to receive news from the cloud world. On the contrary, Zifong found out ahead of time. At this moment, he smiled without caring at all. If the Buddhist faction isn't willing, you don't have to participate. I won't force you. I just hope that you don't leak the news. Ruler is joking. We really have no choice but to participate in this matter. Zifong broke into a laugh and shook his head. While he spoke, his expression was really weird. If it is just to speed up time, it is okay if it has a portion of the mysteries of the instant space race. However, that item has the ability to push back the tribulation. Even within our Buddhist faction, we rarely have such treasures. Ruler's conditions are so good. If we reject, then we really don't know what is good for us. I think the Kinzo sect, Song Shengdao, is the same. Ruler, don't worry. This treasure concerns the rise and fall of your sect. The Buddhist faction won't leak a single word. At the start, Zhongsho didn't care, but when he heard the second sentence, his heart sank. Push back the tribulation? He didn't know that the Universe Light Hall had such an expert. Instantly, his heart felt pained. He really made a loss in this deal. If he knew that this would happen, he would have asked for more benefits. At this moment, the dust had settled and what was done. It was too late for him to regret. He couldn't help but smile with an ugly expression. Is that so? That is for the best. Tai Chi didn't bother about his sad mood, opening his mouth once more and directly asking. At this moment, everyone is here and everything is prepared. Where is Ruler prepared to start? There are 100,000 worlds in this region. Apart from those desolate worlds that don't have much production, most of them have owners. It is extremely difficult for us to find an ownerless land. This time, be it Ruler or our three factions, we can only succeed and can't fail. Jun Shang, please be careful. Zhongsho took in a deep breath, his face turning cold. Although Tai Chi's words were a little unpleasant and his tone was a little cold, the logic wasn't wrong. However, the logic was not wrong. This time, They could only win and could not afford to lose. Actually, in his memory, the best outer region world was the small world that Shuriwa occupied at the start. Not only was its production dozens of times better than Tianfeng world, within this world, there wasn't much resistance. This place had probably fallen into the hands of Shuriwa. A few months ago, when he fought with Shuriwa, he knew how strong the country was. However, at that time, he was at his weakest and was unable to stop it. Apart from this place, there weren't many worlds around the cloud world that could be opened up. They either had owners and were hard to shake, or they had to pay a huge price, or they were just barren. Zhongsho remembered one place that produced a lot of resources. It was a medium-sized world, and the amount of various mines there was pretty much 10 times that of the entire cloud world before the spiritual wave. Although the native races within weren't wiped out. However, the experts of the inner realm were all swept clean. However, at this moment, there were many powers that were fighting for it. To take it down, they would have to go through tens and even hundreds of battles. However, this was the only world that Zhongsho could think of that could be used as a place to fight. There were no shortcuts, so he could only cut a path out of these thorns. After using half a day, Zhongsho made Tai Chi and Zifeng leave in satisfaction. If it was just him alone, he could decide everything himself. Whatever Zhongsho said, it was what it was. Within the Qian, they worshipped him, and no one would object. However, since the Kinzo sect and the Buddhist faction only joined in, then the nature was different. Zhongsho saw these few sides as his shareholders. When they had doubts about his strategy, naturally, he had to spend effort to explain. Thus, he also knew that the Kinzo sect had invested a lot this time. 3,000 swordsmen, 300 grade, 7 and 3 spirit realm. The Buddhist faction wasn't weak at all. Similarly, they had 3 spirit realm monks and 4,000 Buddhist sect disciples. Song Shengdao had 4,000, 4 spirit realm, and there were actually 3 divisions of 450 common people, mysterious dragon warriors. If they could achieve something, they could invest more. Based on what Zhao Yanran said, this was because of him. The Taoist faction was heavily injured, and the pressure on the 3 factions was lifted. Naturally, they all raised the standards and strength of their expedition to the outer region. Firstly, it was to train their disciples. Secondly, it was because of Zhongsho's tribulation battle a few months ago. Long Ying becoming a saint gave them some confidence. The cloud world rose up too late. Although they had several end realm experts, they weren't strong enough in the outer region. The Lords of Realms often had complicated relationships, and their backgrounds were often deep. For example, the Liu family. Apart from the 800 worlds, they had 3,000 worlds under them. Many end realm experts were wary of the expansion of the cloud world. The moment the signs appeared, they would work together to suppress them. This was why they didn't make much progress in these 10,000 years. The Taoist faction was only spreading their teachings in dozens of worlds at the edge. The Buddhist faction was in a similar situation. Their situation was slightly better, but they only had 100 worlds. If not, they wouldn't have revolted and wanted to open another region to create a true paradise. This time, they wouldn't participate. Looking at it now, the rise of the God Emperor in the future would sweep an entire region. That was because the Cloud World cultivators had been suppressed for too long. However, after the 100 years spiritual wave, they are in a low state. The sad part of the Cloud World is that they can only suppress their spiritual energy. Only then can they prevent the other worlds from coveting it. To him, even if that heaven-opening artifact was taken out, the spiritual energy shouldn't be so low. Sealing the spiritual wave wasn't just to restrict martial arts. Zhongsho's heart was filled with emotions. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. Whether or not the spiritual wave was sealed, it didn't matter to him. He told the coordinates of that world to Ruolin. Zhongsho accompanied the two of them and talked about everything under the sun, chatting casually. He coaxed Ruolin until she was beaming with joy. Zhongsho went into secluded meditation once more. Within his palace, he used the Book of Ian to speed up his cultivation. Actually, with his current situation, he wasn't able to make much progress in terms of spiritual sense and true chi. The so-called cultivation was to continuously polish and refine those 24 instant space dragon pellets. Within the dragon pellet, he would perfect the talisman formation, causing it to change from illusionary to real and illusionary to merge into his soul. Apart from that, he had one more job. Xiao Chun used his mind to form a saber and carved runes on a dragon tooth bit by bit. Before leaving Tianfeng world, Shun Yuexian gave him a spiritual sense artifact, crafting technique. From the beginning to the end, the entire sword had been sculpted bit by bit using soul power. Just like that, when the sword artifact was completed, without him needing to refine it, it was already filled with his spiritual sense imprint. He could control it with his heart, much stronger than normal sword artifacts. However, to carve out 10,000 of them one by one, it was a huge amount of work. At the start, Zhongsho failed several times. This was the first time he knew that the dragon tooth was such a tough and overbearing item. Zhongsho gathered his spiritual sense into the knife, and when it touched, his spiritual sense would shatter. He tried to forcefully, but he couldn't grasp the strength. He didn't craft the sword well, and instead, a few of the dragon teeth were destroyed. Zhongsho had no choice but to use similar materials to replace it. After he felt familiar with it, he truly started. At this moment, a sword gradually took shape. Zhongsho also noticed the benefits of such an artifact crafting method. After a few times, his control of his soul power started to get close to the microscopic level. Chapter 832. Zhongsho sat alone at the back of the giant ship. 36 star dragon cores flickered around him. They flashed and changed positions. Actually, at this moment, they couldn't be called dragon pellets, but true stars. They had totally merged with the stars in Zhongsho's soul. At this moment, 2 months had passed since he met up with his fleet. As for the 24 dragon pills that he had refined back then, he had already completed the transformation between illusion and reality. However, in the end, he had to carve those dragon teeth into the 10 extreme Imperial Dao sword artifacts. The increase was much less than what he had expected. On one hand, he was distracted. On the other hand, for the first 24 stars, Zhongsho chose to start from the Daos that he was most familiar with and came into contact with the most. The stars after that were slightly more difficult. Zhongsho made 12 at the same time. Only now did he complete the transformation. His strength improved once more. 2 months ago, his Universe Light Sword and power were a little weaker than the Killing Path Sword intent. 2 months later, he had surpassed it. With the help of the 36 stars, the Slaughter Sword Dao could surpass the Sword Intent Soul Realm with a single strike. At this moment, Zhongsho could follow his thoughts. He could appear at any point of the 36 stars. These stars were between real and illusionary. They were the images of the heart image void dharma in this world. Unless one's soul power far exceeded his or grasped the space path, otherwise, one wouldn't be able to harm him at all. With this set of stars, he was truly confident that he would be able to get out of any dangerous situation safely. In addition to these stars, there was also a sword array around him. There were a total of 12 of them. 10 extreme Imperial Dao Dragon Tooth swords. They all followed a specific trajectory and danced in the air in a circular manner. The tooth swords had no sharp edges. Due to Zhongsho's clumsy skills, they looked really ugly. They looked totally harmless, and there was nothing special about them. At this moment, who knows if it was a coincidence or if Zhongsho did it on purpose. A level 7 carp dragon that was commonly seen in the Jie River suddenly barged in without knowing what was going on. Then, the sword formation immediately came to life. Streaks of sword chi were unleashed, sweeping out in all directions, from inside out, from left to right. In the blink of an eye, the pitiful 7th level carp dragon was slashed into pieces by the sword shadows. Only a rain of blood was left, scattering across the realm river. The palace was simply too small. Within the ship, Zhongsho didn't dare to mess around like he did in Gantian Mountain. If he wanted to try out his divine ability, He would have to go to the stern of the ship where there was no one around or leave the ship. Even if there was any movement, it would not damage the hull. However, because of this special environment, there were naturally some spectators around. It's really a bit of a killjoy. That's right, it was said that the meat of the carp dragon was the most delicious. Especially after the 7th level, their deliciousness is the best in the world. What a pity. The 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Annihilation Sword Formation was indeed worthy of its name of annihilation. It directly slashed the huge carp dragon into meat paste. In the end, the true dragon bloodline hated false dragons with inferior bloodlines. They would kill anyone they saw. His 12-10 Extreme Imperial Tao Dragon Tooth swords also inherited this specialty. When Zifeng and Tai Chi heard that, they were speechless. What scenery was there to speak of in this dark void? Wasn't he the one who slashed the carp dragon into such a state? Jingyin closed her eyes, chanting the primordial ancient Buddha. Then she persuaded, "Ruler, you must know that all life is equal. Although the matters of the world are like eating strong meat, everything in the world has its own cycle. However, life can't be treated so lightly. This carp dragon didn't offend us. The ship has many resources and doesn't need to use it as food. How can we kill it so cruelly just for fun?" When Zhongshou heard that, he felt that it made sense and felt a little ashamed. However, he definitely wouldn't say that he was unable to fully control this 10 Extreme Imperial Tao Annihilation Sword Formation. It was like when the sword formation was initially crafted, it had a life and didn't listen to his orders. Instinctively, it would wipe out all things within the formation. What was weird was that Zhongshou didn't sense any artifact spirits within the swords. He was filled with questions and wanted to ask Xin Yuexian. Unfortunately, at this moment, they were too far away from Tianfeng World, and he couldn't run all the way back. Luckily, after he analyzed the sword formation, he basically confirmed that this sword artifact didn't have the strength to attack its master. However, there were some spiritual patterns within the formation that were a little weird. It wasn't much, but it didn't have to be like that. He could only deduce that the person who passed down this sword formation had a huge animosity with the living beings of the world. Or maybe he didn't reach the end realm and became mentally sick before he died. At this moment, Zhongshou was helpless. Not to mention that after this formation was formed, it wouldn't be a threat to him. Even if it had the strength to attack its master, it needed to drink poison to quench its thirst and grasp a certain amount of strength first. Speaking of which, the ancient talisman that Shan Yuexian sold to him was being used up more and more. The person who put the curse on him must be using all his strength to frantically search for his location. He originally thought that he could drag it out for half a year, but now it was at most 4 months. The Cloud World had Tsang Shangdao taking care of it, so Zhongshou wasn't worried about the safety of his family. The only thing he was worried about was Ruoshui and Rulin, as well as the 300,000 soldiers who followed his orders to conquer the outer region. In other words, he had to open up the situation in the shortest amount of time. Then, he would go all out to deal with that person's crazy pursuit, until the two of them fought to the death. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. Zhongshou smiled and returned to normal. He sighed once more. What is even more unfortunate is that I can't find a suitable opponent for this sword formation to test its ability. At the same time, he looked behind him with a bitter gaze. Zifeng was expressionless as he sat down and entered a meditative state. Tai Chi's body shuddered, and he felt a chill run down his spine. After Zhongshou crafted the 10th sword, he wanted to find someone to test this sword formation. Coincidentally, at that time, he also had some challenges. He wanted to see how far away he was from this invincible person in the Cloud World. However, the outcome was too horrible to look at. The process was just 10 breaths, but it once again dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. If it wasn't for Zhongshou stopping at the last moment, he would have been ripped apart in the formation. However, from then on, it left a psychological shadow. When he saw this sword formation, he instinctively stayed far away from it. At this moment, he felt weird as he looked at the shining stars around Zhongshou. Zhongshou had displayed the sword formation a few times, but these stars only appeared on the outside and weren't used. It was covered in a mysterious veil, making it tough for one to guess its ability. It was a little similar to the Taoist faction's cycle of stars falling technique. A few months ago, Zhongshou swept the central continent. He should have obtained a portion of this Taoist faction technique legacy. Did this fellow change to cultivate this technique? This could make up for Zhongshou's weakness in spells. However, the core of this technique was definitely within the common people's path vast habitat. For Zhongshou to walk on this path, he had to either perfect it himself or forcefully snatch it. Anyways, it would be tough. Zifang and Tai Chi acted like they didn't know anything. Naturally, the other spirit realm experts wouldn't agree. Ruo Shui had the intention to agree, but Zhongshou himself wasn't willing. The people at the back of the boat were instantly silent. Only Zhao Yinran scoffed coldly, cocky. Zhongshou was indeed gleeful. When the sword formation was just formed, it had the strength to suppress spirit realm experts. Then, after a set of 10,800 Dragon Tooth swords was completed, what would happen? Just as he was about to speak, he mocked back. Zhongshou's brows rose up, and then he smiled. Forget it. If you all aren't willing, then I won't force you. The person to test the sword has already arrived. After traveling for several months, they finally arrived at the chaotic land in his memory. In the next instance, a cold scoff spread out from the distance. This is the Yuanren world. Where did all of you come from? Why are you all here? Along with these words, dozens of intents spread out in the air, reaching over with their spiritual senses. Zhongshou didn't speak. He had no intention of being arrogant about his identity as the ruler. However, at this time, it wasn't appropriate for him to personally speak. In front of this giant ship, there were naturally people who spoke. We are the Qin soldiers of the cloud world. We are here to expand our land. We heard that the Yuanren world has no master, so we are here to take it. Before he finished, maniacal laughter spread out from opposite. Cloud world to Qin? I was wondering which power it was. So it is the country bumpkins of the cloud world. After hiding for 10,000 years, you are finally willing to run out from your turtle shell? Another person said, this place is occupied by us. You all can return where you came from. If not, once the battle starts, don't blame us for being merciless and killing all of you. This is where our heroes fight. How is there a place for all of you? When these words spread out, Tai Chi and Zhao Yinran's faces turned green. No matter who it was, if they were scolded as country bumpkins, they would definitely react. Zifang's expression was also really ugly, although the Buddhist faction was an outsider in the cloud world. However, he himself was also a member of the cloud world. In other words, he was one of the country bumpkins that these people were talking about. The fleet was still casually moving forwards, heading towards the Yuanren world. Tai Chi and the others all returned to their positions, their auras rising. It covered the ship to threaten. A few people finally appeared in the distance. Dozens of large ships of different styles appeared one after another. They charged over from all directions, forming a pincer attack. 15 Spirit Realm, you actually have some strength. However, with just you all, you're still a little lacking. Before Xiao Chun finished speaking, a saber light pierced through the air. Like a mountain collapsing, the aura was vast and intense. Zhongshou, who was behind the ship, smiled happily. The few people in front of them were both trying to stop them from moving forwards and also to test them, who knew that there would actually be people who attacked first. Shen Yuexian once said that this 10 extreme Imperial Dao Destruction sword formation, all the sword artifacts had to see blood before it could be considered unsealed. Till date, only 3 swords had seen blood. Who knew that at this moment, there would be so many people who could sacrifice themselves to the sword. The blade light landed, and Tai Chi charged up from the ship with a sword. The weapons clashed, instantly shaking the void. Tai Chi's body instantly fell down like a kite with a broken string. However, the giant ship was perfectly fine. That person laughed out loud. Spirit and martial arts merger. I underestimated you. Just at this moment, the 12 white dragon-tooth swords in front of Zong Show all flew up. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.